everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get these site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. We have the usual crew here again today. I'm your host. My name is Brian Vitale. Joining me, I have Josh Torres.
Hi.
Adam Vitale.
Hello.
James Galizio.
Hey, folks.
And Chow Min Woo.
How's it going?
We are about halfway through April, surprisingly. I know a lot of us here at RPG Site have been working through our backlogs and touching a few newer games that are coming out in the next couple of weeks. But looking at the slate of releases for this week, we have a few features up on the site from a few other contributors to the website that we want to call out. We've got some new footage again for some big releases coming out in the summer. So this is going to be a little bit more of a casual episode, not a huge list of blockbusters here, but a few smaller games that we've played in the next week, a few games coming up in this next couple days we're interested in trying out. And of course, looking forward into the early summer and, late summer, early fall months as the release date calendar continues to kind of come into focus as we approach whatever is going to be the June, gaming event of the summer, because there is no E3. We've got the Summer Gaming Fest. We've got a few other publishers that are planning different sorts of things. We got just words this last week about Nintendo having like some sort of Seattle event in terms of some sort of summer substitute, but it doesn't know if that's just going to be more of a celebration or less focus on announcements. It's kind of all up in flux and all up in the air. A little bit of a different feel as we go into the late spring months here.
It's kind of weird, like hearing about it's like, oh, that's like an event like near me. That's weird because
That's
like
everything.
Everything's in California, like usually in California, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm up like by Seattle now. That's weird. Should I go there? I don't know.
That's where both Nintendo and Microsoft are found. So I'm surprised they don't have more up there. And of course, Emerald City Comic Con, PAX West, all that stuff. So there's a few opportunities in that area. Yeah, like I said, April is kind of a little bit of a quieter month, but there have been a few either recently released or soon upcoming releases that we have a few features up on the site from some, specifically from Scott White here, that I at least want to shout out a little bit before we get into the games that we've been playing. So one of the bigger releases of this week is the Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection. And I don't know if anyone here has played the remaster or is planning to or has played the original versions of these games, but I do want to at least give the opportunity here to shout out that Scott has put up his initial thoughts and review up on the game up on rpgsite.net, though I do know he was being very cautious in terms of trying to adequately and fairly cover that game's single player and multiplayer components. So has anyone here played Mega Man Battle Network games?
I played a few of them, like the original releases. Like played the original 3, and I don't know which versions of like 5 and I was like 5 and 6.
I actually don't know how many. Are there 6 of them? I don't actually know how many there are bundled here.
Quite a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. And then there's also Star Force as well.
I think the most hated game was the third one, I think it was it?
No, people love the third one. What are you talking about?
Know.
I've definitely heard some people that dislike the third one.
Really? I heard a lot of people like the third one.
I remember when the game felt kind of incomplete or something. One of them.
I don't know. I don't fucking keep up with like what.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I played it. I'm more into the battle transmission game, the one where it plays like the standard Mega Man game.
Okay. Right.
But using like the the chip-in system from like the portable game. So
this was also like even the Battle Network games. There's like beyond games. Like there's like a shitload of like anime seasons for the Battle Network series.
Yeah.
In Scott's review, he says 10 RPGs worth. So
I think it's 6 games, and then various games have different versions. So
yeah. Like the Pokemon style.
That rings a bell. I remember that back in the day, how you'd have like 2 different colored versions of the same game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so Scott's review is pretty glowing in most respects, with the main exception being that he wasn't able to definitively go through line by line. But these games, I suppose, are notorious for kind of quick slapdash localizations. They have a lot of charm to them, but apparently they're not very accurate at all. And they're kind of, they read awkwardly. And apparently that is, and I've seen this in both in his review and in a few places online, not really, it's the same. It's very faithful to the original games in that respect. So not a strong relocalization effort on these releases, just repackaged and re-released as they were initially, which might be a disappointment for some, but otherwise for those that have the nostalgia for it, maybe they're okay with it.
Isn't this like I'm pretty sure this was like the game series that had like the NPC that like looks like a fucking grandpa. He's like, I'm 30. It's like, yeah. I get it now.
Isn't it also one where it's like on time to jack in or
Yep. Yes.
Everybody
one
jack off.
there's our title. And the one Scott calls out is there's so many electrical store, like bad plural and things like that. But so we're recording this podcast on the 15th, and this game officially released on the 14th. Scott's review went up a few days earlier. His single-player focused, unscored review up on the site. I believe he's planning to revisit once he's able to go into some of the multiplayer components now that the game is officially released. And I know we're going a little bit out of a different order here, going into the feature rundown, but another game that is coming out in the next couple of days on the 18th, I believe, is the League of Legends story Mageseeker. It's the game we've covered on this podcast that is very reminiscent of like Hyper Light Drifter. And Scott was able to play that as well, I believe at PAX East. So he put up a kind of a preview on that upcoming game up on the site. Basically, kind of as expected, calls out how it's very approachable for players who, like him, don't have a lot of the history or knowledge of the League roster or story or mythos or anything like that, which has been kind of, it seems like, a good bar that Riot's been hitting with all of their kind of expanded IP projects involving the League of Legends games that they've been putting out for the last couple of years. So Scott has both of those features up on the site for the Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection and the Mageseeker. With that, I was looking through the games talk section that we have of the podcast, and one of the more notable releases of this week is a game that is coming out of Steam Early Access. We covered this about a week or two ago on the podcast, coming into version 1.0, and that is the game Wartales. This is a game that before I read about its 1.0 announcement, I wasn't really sure what it was, but I had kind of noted that it had a pretty strong following, a very large number of positive reviews on Steam, and even in our news post for the game, a few comments mentioning that they had already had 100 hours in the early access version of this game and were eager to see it go to full release. So I had this game kind of on my list, but I haven't had time to clear out and try it just yet. It released, I believe, on the 12th. But this was a surprise to me. But Josh, you had told me that you would actually put at least a couple hours into Wartales.
Yeah.
So I figured, even though I know you haven't gotten a lot of progress into it yet, I figured we might as well at least start there and just kind of give a chance to have you talk about your very early impressions of the game and like what exactly. All I really know is that it's an open world isometric RPG with like a medieval setting.
I don't know if it's like procedurally generated too, and like you open up a new playthrough. I don't know if like the world's procedurally generated or not, and so forth. It was like I kind of briefly looked into it as well when we started getting this on our radar when they were gearing up for 1.0 release. Because this game has like been in early access for several years now, as the developers have been refining it. When you first open the game and you start, you kind of have you kind of tailor your party at first. So how they go about this is like your companions are ... and you have like 5 options. It's like apprentice friends looking for an adventure, and then that option, like you start with like influence plus 30, raw materials minus 5, but your starting companions, like your party composition is like a swordsman, archer, ranger, and brute. Or if you choose an option like men escorting merchants who lost their employer, then you start with you start a little bit more money called crowns plus 150, but medicine minus 2 at that, and then you're starting your party composites like swordsman, warrior, spearman, and brute. And then you have other options like to like frame your background or like your motivation, like young farmers looking for a better life, or bandits.
So they come as like bundles, like you choose like a set.
Yeah, pretty much like your friends. I don't know if you can like toggle them when you I'll go check really fast if you can toggle them, but just like I have the game open right now to remind you like what these options are. So let's say I choose an apprentice friends looking for an adventure. Then like the next thing, like it asks you like your parents are ... are used to long walks. It just provides you a bonus. So like this would be like reduces the speed at which the troops fatigue stacks by 10%, or they're cutting fighters, which gives you bonuses on like their experience gained and their influence gained. And then other options like your parents show incredible resilience or excellent at slap games, which is funny because that one is like critical damage increased by 10%. Or are quick learners, which like you gain experience faster for each professions. Then you toggle that, and then you choose, and then the last thing you before you start customizing like the look of your party and giving a name is like if they had a flaw, if your party had a flaw, and then it would be like like a debuff, it'll give them like a somewhat meek appearance, or carrying capacity is decreased by 1, or eternal dissatisfaction, which means like they always it reduces their happiness by like 1 every time they like do an arrest, and so forth like that. Then
so it's like a character creator for a whole party.
Yeah, pretty much. And then like the interesting thing is like before you start like tweaking them and changing their parents, their name, it also has like 2 difficulty modes that are pretty interesting, because there's like an adaptive exploration, which is basically it's always going to be tough wherever you go. So like the difficulty of the game is always scaling by like your party's like level and their stats. So like no matter where you go, you're always like challenged. Or there's like a region lock exploration, which you can think of like maybe like Dragon's Dogma, where like this region of the world map will have easier mobs in this region of the map. As you continue to like venture off, like there's always gonna be like there's like harder and harder mobs like at this region of the map, and so forth. So there's like and then you have certain difficulties that can be tweaked before you start your playthrough, like combat difficulty, survival difficulty, and like a save mode, which is it's something you'd like maybe like in a Fire Emblem, or like save where like you can do a limited save mode where like hey, it's only 1 save per game, but you can go back at certain checkpoints or the last village you visited or at the beginning of battle. You can do a save mode, a free save mode where like you can always save wherever you want and use as many save modes as you want. And then of course Ironman, like in XCOM, or like hey, you only get 1 save mode, and or one save slot, and once you die, that's it. And
I always have the utmost respect for people that can play these long RPGs in Iron Man mode.
Yeah, and then now I'm like just from refreshing my memory of the character creator, like like the party compositions that you set are like locked. So like the only thing you can do with your characters from then on is to give them a different name and then like randomize their appearance, like tweak their appearances. It's like your party of 4 plus a horse, and you can name the horse as well and tweak the appearance of the horse. So I named it after my friends and myself, and then I named one of my friends the horse as well. And then when you start tweaking your characters before you start your playthrough, you can give them up to 2 positive traits and 1 negative trait, and they can be random if you want, or you can like specifically pick it out. Like the positive traits, like maybe critical hit increase by like the so forth, or increase by strength by like 5%, and like or their like hardworking trait, which like they get to earn more professional experience, etc. And then like the negative traits are something like you decrease their movement, or they receive less wages, or
I assume you have to give them a negative trait.
Yes. Well, no, you don't have to give them a negative trait actually.
Oh, okay. So it's like for challenge. All right.
Yeah. So, I see. The interesting how they balance is like you have to give them a negative trait if you give them 2 positive traits. If you don't want a negative trait, you can only give them 1 positive trait.
Okay.
Yes.
That's a fun way to balance it.
Mm-hmm. And then like you can like give them aside from their like base attack, like with their weapon, whether it's like a sword, a bow and arrow, or a spear, they have like 1 like like ability they can start with as well before like obviously they're gonna level up and they'll learn new skills along the way as they level up. But like you can kind of toggle their first initial ability, like say 1 is like hey, you can heal like a dying ally, or it can be like gains defense for some of them. It's like a basic skill that you can arm them with. So once you start, like how I started my playthrough is like I had the Merry Band of Adventurers, um, and so forth. Just a really basic like kind of backstory for them, and you're kind of put into this overworld map at first, and it's kind of you're kind of like almost aimless, and you're kind of like wandering around, just like seeing where like it's very much a game that like doesn't like heavily tutorialize you at first. Like it'll point you like, hey, this is kind of like the UI. This is what you're looking at, and you're and but you're going around this map, and there'll be times where you run into a mob on the map. You can try to escape them or engage them in battle. And when you engage them in battle, it'll go to like a separate battle screen, and like a lot of the UI may look like XCOM at first. So like for example, when you get an ally round, you but how turn order is um given to you is like it'll be like an ally enemy, or like ally enemy, or ally enemy. So it's not like all allies first then enemies. It's like at a set order.
So
But when it's an ally,
so it's not round based. It's truly turn based.
yeah, it's turn based. But when you get an ally turn, you can choose any ally that you want that hasn't moved in that round yet.
Ah,
So like
okay.
if you want to move like your heavy hitters first, you can do that. It's not that ally isn't like locked to a character. You can choose anyone that hasn't acted that in that turn, that round yet.
That's
So
interesting. I was trying to think if I could think of another game that worked quite like that, but no. Usually, I've played plenty of games, of course, that are round based, where it's the allies phase and you move them in whatever order, or it's bespoke. It's this character's turn, you move them now. I don't know if I played a game where it's like, all right, now you choose an ally to move. I'm sure I
yeah,
have. It's just not coming to mind right now.
yeah. So there's kind of like the first like tactical layer there, and then like when you choose like a to move, it'll look like XCOM, where like kind of have like that those curved rectangles, of like their movement range. There's not really a grid on the map either. It's kind of like more freeform than that. So you're just kind of like moving based on like the range that like you're given. Obviously, like your more quick agile characters, like say like a ranger, will have more movement than let's say like a warrior.
Mhm.
And then what's interesting is when you engage a character into an enemy, like you start battling them head on, they're kind of locked into like head to head combat with that character. If they want to disengage from that, if you or the enemy want to disengage from like that combat encounter with each other, they have to like make that move to disengage. But if they want to, but they take a damage penalty for it. So
Well,
if they want
that's
to,
sorry. That reminds me very much of like tabletop RPGs, attacks of
yeah.
opportunity, things like that. When
Mhm.
you try to disengage from a battle.
Yeah. So like that, so there'll be like, ways to like kind of like, hey, if you really want, if there's like a threatening like enemy unit that like you have a tanky, you would obviously want your tanky character to like kind of get aggro on them, so they're not a threat on like to your other squishier characters. Like you're kind of forcing them to like go toe to toe, and if they want to disengage, then they have to like will get hit.
Mm.
Um, and so forth. Line of sight is also very important for things like rangers, or I mean not rangers, or archers, for example. So like, like when if they want to like try to hit a character or an enemy with a bow and arrow, you have to make sure that like their line of sight isn't like blocked by like an ally, because there's a chance they might hit them. So stuff like that you kind of like gauge like by like the field of view that the battle gives you. There's also damage bonuses on like if you hit an enemy from behind and so forth, because like everyone is usually armored um, at the start of battle, so you have to like get through their armored uh, first before you can start dealing HP damage to them. So anything to like kind of flip the table on them and try to get like basically out damage them before they damage you. Um,
I know a lot
is
of
usually
games have armor
advantageous.
systems like that, but it makes me think of Divinity Original Sin 2, where every character
Yeah.
had like a kind of a magic armor shell that you had to either work through or work around in order to actually deal HP damage.
Yeah, this fun like like your armor does come at a cost. So like if your damage is broken, you have to like if you want to repair it, you do have to like spend like money to like get it
Mhm.
repaired, um, and so forth. So it teaches you the basics of combat. There was like one of my more interesting encounters, like early on after like I accepted a quest, I went to like the quest area, and like there's like this like pretty like tough tanky enemy that's like giving like a defense bonus to it's like the two allies that they had, and like I wanted to like separate like the boss enemy from like the two friends that he had. So like before you start the round, you can like there are certain places on the map that you can like freely like arrange your characters in. But it's not like all over the map. It's like specific spots on the map where you can like kind of rearrange your characters before the combat begins.
Mhm.
So I basically kind of arranged like my ranger character that had like a lot of movement to like kind of get the aggro of the two enemies, and they just kind of like ran all over the map, kind of like making sure that they kept their distance so they didn't take damage. But they always had the intention of the enemy trying to chase after them, while like all my three other units like kind of just like was like in another part of like the map, like dealing with the boss enemy, like trying to like make sure to like get this um enemy out of the way first to get to take them out so they can get the leader bonus out of the way so they don't have additional defense. And every time you kill an enemy, get like a rally, like a damage bonus, and you galvanize your troops as well. Just so like the more enemies that like you um deal with the bigger damage bonus that you get, so you kind of have like a momentum going
I like
from
systems
that.
that work like that with like I can think of a few systems like that. Like Last Remnant's morale system is kind of like that. I believe
Yeah.
Expeditions Rome had something kind of like that. I'll have to double check that one. But having some of those like long-term battle mechanics where it kind of rewards you for playing it either safe or methodically, or allows yourself to kind of get some of that momentum going, either by taking out the boss unit early and getting rid of that passive bonus that they're giving out, or working your way up to them by making sure that you're not taking damage or losing health before you get to them.
Yeah. So and then like there are like it's like some survival mechanics in the game as well. So like as you're moving around that overworld map, like the day cycle is going. There's like a day night cycle, and your party members will eventually get weary and tired and fatigued. So you can set up camp like mostly anywhere on the world map. But when you set up camp, you always have to before you go to sleep, you have to like kind of feed them and make sure that like that you're kind of offsetting their happiness with how much food that you give them, so then they're not too miserable with like just being fed very poorly. Um, and also, there's a chance like during at night that you might be attacked. I didn't get attacked yet, but there's like it says like the rest chance. You have like a 20% you might be ambushed. So that maybe like the position of where you rest on the map like might affect that chance. I haven't had that happen to me yet. So I don't exactly know
That
what
also
happens.
seems very reminiscent of like tabletop RPGs, both
Yeah,
literal ones or video games based on them. Like the Pathfinder games have a
right.
camping system like that, and I'm sure dozens of others too. But those are the ones
hmm
I played most recently.
Yeah, it very very much relies on like that those tabletop systems to kind of guide its like the basic systems that it's operating on. Then they're like anytime that you see like a town, you can go into it, and then like the towns aren't like fully explorable. You just they're kind of more of like menu driven. Like, hey, here's a picture of the town, and then like here are the places that you can go in the town. So like, say I want to go to the inn, so it'll like warp you to the inn. You can
Mhm.
see like who you want to interact with. You can kind of barter with NPCs. Everything's been like fully voice acted so far. I'm pretty interested to see like what the scope of like the game is like in terms of like how many unique voices they have in the game and all that stuff. Because I'm pretty impressed so far with the production value on that. Um, and then so like I'm very early going. So like all I've really done so far is I visited like the first like nearby town near me. I've taken up like the three nearby quests. And then I began journeying west to like where the first quest was, and kind of getting a feel of like okay, there's like other things going on. It's like the story in itself isn't like really deep right now. It's like you're kind of introduced to like hey, you're like you because of the background that you chose, you're like you have these four initial starting characters. You have just this horse, and the main feature or function of the horse is like they function as additional carrying capacity. So instead of your characters always bearing on the burden of of all the equipment that they're or stuff that they're carrying, you can offload that to the horse instead. So there's less like weight on them to that's bogging them down and making them more tired because they're instead of like carrying all that weight, it's the horse instead. Um, and I know that like people who have really sunk a lot of like hours into this game have like absurd like pretty much armies that they've like crafted people like invested like 100 or so hours. It's like I have like over 30 characters and it's like this many like ponies and horses and like here's like my upkeep of like how much food I have to give them like to like per like day to like maintain their upkeep and everything. I'm like that sounds fucking crazy, you know. But yeah, I mean, it seems really solid for what it is so far. Very well made. I'm looking forward to like digging into it more and kind of exploring more of like what it has to offer. And like, there's a profession system. Like when I went to like the blacksmith place, like, hey, I made one of my characters a blacksmith off the bat because like when you visit like the blacksmith anvil, you can actually like you use the option like, hey, do you want to have any of your characters like become a blacksmith, start learning the blacksmith profession to like use this anvil. And I saw that like it gives a strength bonus. So I was like, okay, I'll give my big heavy hitter swordsman like make them become a blacksmith because they'll get the strength bonus. And then it seems like and then in my mind it's like blacksmithing is usually like a handy profession like in any RPG, to like start like getting better equipment or upgrading equipment and so forth when you start getting the materials for them.
Is the game completely like is there a fantasy element or is it all just medieval, historical fiction?
It seems like medieval. It seems to be down to earth medieval so far from what I've seen. I haven't seen like any like dragons or like
Griffins or
griffins or
wyverns
ratmen.
all right.
Yeah, I haven't seen like any like fantastical elements yet. There could be,
But it's all
but
it's not like it's how do I word this? It's like fictional politics, countries, factions.
yeah, from what I've seen, it's like it seems to be like your standard medieval down to earth sort of trope. So yeah, I mean that's kind of like my very early impressions of Wartales so far. It seems pretty cool. It seems like it also supports like four player online co-op. So like if you just like want to start like a long RPG campaign with like three other dedicated friends, all controlling a character and just going on an adventure, it seems really good
does
for that.
It does seem like it could be like a fun substitute for like a Roll20 tabletop game or something like that. At least kind of scratch that same itch. It seems like it's definitely a slow burn, but one that could easily engross you if you decide to be the person that has like 40 retainers and 20 horses and or whatever, things like that.
Yeah, there's still like a big road to explore. I just kind of been going at it at my own pace. But yeah, this is there's a game I definitely will like boot up here once in a while and like make progress here and there. It's not like one I'll marathon probably, but like one that I'll. It's just like it's neat to like kind of get the kind of this classic tabletop experience from like just from a game that like from my purview like this came out of nowhere, but obviously this has been a thing for like years now.
Yeah, we're ignorant. So for us, it kind of came out of nowhere. But then you go to Steam and it's like, oh, it's got 10,000 reviews already because of the early access period and things like that.
Yeah.
So
no, cool.
as you were talking about it, I've purchased it and downloaded it. So I'm kind of lowering my hurdle so that I can actually like get to this and try it. So
yeah,
I was hoping.
I've had a friend like who's like kind of pitched it to me too. Like he was talking about it, like his experience with like other friends too. I was like, that sounds really cool with what they've been telling me about like their playthrough of the game. It's like, oh man, it's something that's like it's there's like it seems to be like deep enough but not too deep to like be totally like inaccessible to me.
Yeah, incomprehensible. Yeah, so I was hoping to get to Wartales because obviously Wartales released as the time of recording a few days ago into version 1.0. I was hoping to get time to at least start it also before this podcast, but I was not able to finish the other game I was playing this week, and that is a release from February that kind of went slightly under the radar only because February was so incredibly packed, and that was Like a Dragon Ishin. So obviously we talked about this game as it released. Josh, you did a really good job covering this game as it released. And then of course for me, this is the first Yakuza / Like a Dragon title that is new to the West that I've been able to play at like a point where I'm caught up with the series. Because obviously Yakuza 7 or Yakuza Like a Dragon was one of my favorite titles of a few years ago. And since that release, I have slowly over the course of the next couple of years played through Yakuza's 3, 4, 5, 6. Lost Judgment and Judgment came to PC like surprise late last summer. So I played through those last year. So now Like a Dragon, Ishin, this is actually kind of like the perfect place to be caught up, because this way I can kind of enjoy all of the character cameos, where of course all the characters have their likenesses shared from whatever actor portrays them in the base series, but now they're playing different characters in Ishin. But also because it is separated from outside of that character likeness, because it is also separated from the base series, it's also a good standalone point. You of course don't get that sort of referential part of the game there, but that's kind of a bonus anyway. So I've been playing through Like a Dragon Ishin. I'm about 20 hours into it. I'm in like chapter 10 out of I believe 13, so I'm a good way of ways through it. I've done like 2/3 of the sub stories, so I'm not being like completionist, but I'm also not being like critical path mainline. Trying to at least explore and get a little bit.
I mean,
of the
a
feel.
lot of them are just like kind of just like in your way. Like you kind of like go from one place to the next, and then it's like all of a sudden here's another fucking NPC. He's like help.
Yeah. You're just following. Yeah, you're just following the critical path, and all of a sudden, yeah, no problem. You have to do a sub event, or at least you're introduced to it, and you have to deliberately choose to ignore it. But usually, if I run into like a sub event, I'm like, all right, these are usually pretty short. I might as well just talk and see what's about it. So I'm not going to go through the high level, like what's the plot, what's the narrative, too much, because obviously that was covered when the game came out. But obviously this does not have any shared characters with the main series. It's just a standalone story where the character being portrayed by, I forget the actor that plays Kazuma Kiryu, but he's now Sakamoto Ryoto, but under the alias of Saito Hajime. And basically the plot of this game is that he is trying to unearth who killed his mentor and father figure, and infiltrates this kind of police state called the like Shinsengumi, which are basically feudal yakuza, to try to discover the identity of this mysterious assailant. The story, without going into like spoilers or going into too many details that are kind of lost if you haven't dug into the game yourself, one thing I have really appreciated about Like a Dragon Ishin's just narrative thrust is I have been on the record of this podcast saying that a lot of Yakuza games, even across just their main plot, which is when it takes itself the most seriously, are just a little bit too out there, or they get really contrived, or there's certain things that require 1,000 different things to go exactly right to make any sense at all. Where this narrative kind of avoids that because it's very straightforward. It's at least at the point I'm at like the 20-hour mark, it's more or less like a murder mystery, and it's very straightforward. Where you've got like okay, what do we know about the assailant? Oh, the assailant uses this style of swordsmanship. Oh, who teaches this? Okay, it's this person that is in a position of power amongst this Shinsengumi, force. Okay, who are my suspects? Okay, there are 6 of them. And then throughout the chapters, either deliberately or unintentionally, Hajime kind of goes through, okay, it couldn't have been this person, it couldn't have been this person. Okay, this person.
You also have just to buy that, like, Hajime Saito's like your swordsmanship doesn't feel, as like it's not just quite that swordsmanship of that assailant, You just kind of have to like buy it,
Yeah. So early on in the story, you fight this masked assailant, and you basically draw or lose depending on your point of view. And he's described to be very, very tough, very, very strong, very, very skilled. And then so you fight other people, and like, you can't have been him because you're not good enough. It's like, ooh, burn, damn. But also it's kind of funny because this assailant's like wearing like a ninja mask, but he has like the slit for his eyes. And then one of the suspects is the character who is played by the same likeness as Goro Majima. So he's got the eye patch. And it's like, he says like it couldn't have been you because you're not strong enough. It's like also this guy only has one eye instead of two. I don't know. But it's so I just like that this game so far hasn't gone to the same level of wackiness or contrivance that the other Yakuza games have. It's been a lot more straight laced, a lot more simple, and I think to its benefit. So I think that also just makes the story very approachable. You don't have like unlike playing Strata Hat Yakuza 4, you don't have to have any history with any of these characters to follow it. So there's no like, oh, remember this thing that happened or this history that's implied between these characters. There isn't any. It's all self-contained. So I think that makes it just a little bit more approachable, a little bit more well-rounded, and easier to follow and just more enjoyable. So I've really that's been a kind of a really positive aspect of this for me.
How do you feel about since you recently somewhat recently played like the 3, 4, and 5 era games, like this game like was originally like at its conception, because it is kind of like a remake of an older game, but it is still built upon that foundation. Like it to me, like it still like exhibited like the stiffness of those games, and like kind of like it reminds me of like this is still definitely a game from its era of those games.
Yeah, it's definitely not as fluid as like the Lost Judgment combat, but it's the only game of the main series that I played that I didn't acclimate to well, because I usually acclimate pretty well if I play an older game and it's a little bit stiff or a little bit clunky. I usually kind of get used to it pretty quick. The one game in this series that I struggled a lot was Yakuza 3. 4, 5, yes, they're more stiff, and even 0 these days doesn't feel like as fluid as Kiwami 2 or 6 or the Judgment games. But I think it's fine. Like I didn't really I know if people have kind of complained or at least criticized that Ishin doesn't feel as fluid as those most recent games, but it's fluid enough for me, and it doesn't I've played worse, I suppose. It's not as bad as Yakuza 3, and where Yakuza 3 everyone just blocks all the time and it's impossible to break guard without like doing very particular things, at least when I played it. The one thing that I did have to adjust to with this game is that Yakuza series have kind of been in that, I keep saying Yakuza series, like a Dragon series, whatever you want to call it. It's been in that fringe RPG space for a while, but this game is the one that most, at least out of what I've played, has most fully embraced that. And I don't know if that's a carryover from the original Japanese release for the PS3, or is it PS3 or PS4 for this one?
Well, both.
Both.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, so a lot of the other Yakuza games have like gear systems and equipment, and even and whatever sort of soul sphere level up system in those games. Like they've all already kind of been there, but this game actually, like, you have a battle end screen that tells you how much EXP you've gotten. You can go to the menu and see what level your character is, like a number out of 99. My character is currently level like 34 or something. You go to a gear shop and you have a weapon tree that looks like a Monster Hunter World weapon tree, where it's like in order to upgrade your Odachi, you have to have this material, and you can branch it either here or here, and they have this different inherent abilities or this many slots to put abilities. So like it really truly like feels like, all right, this is a definitely game our site should be covering, because it has so many of these.
This one definitely like you're reminding me like how my playthrough was of this. Like I crafted a sword that like had like a purple aura because it inflicted poison. So you just have a crazy looking sword that like has like crazy stats, and also gives like it also inflicts status ailments, on hit, which is really funny.
And there's even like item rarity, like basic, fine, and instead of calling it like I like how kind of straightforward the tiers are. Instead of being like masterwork or legendary or whatever, it's like basic, or it's like dull, fine, great, best, or something like that. Like, oh yeah, I've got a best tier, whatever katana I've got. So, but yeah, the weapon tier, it looks just like the Monster Hunter World or Monster Hunter Rise, just weapon tree with the same similar, like, you need this material to upgrade and this much money, and then you actually like you tier up the shop in order to like get different discounts or have higher percentages to imbue different abilities, things like that. And I struggled on some of the bosses, and I'm like, all right, I can't just ignore, because in a lot of the other Yakuza games, the weapons or gear systems are kind of like extra, they're for fun, you can kind of ignore them, but in this game yeah, you can kind of ignore it because as you defeat story bosses, they'll drop different weapons that kind of keep you so you don't fall too far behind. But there's a lot more to dig into, and it's a lot more meaningful. And I've, of course, as an RPG numbers nerd, I've enjoyed that a lot. The one part of Yakuza or Like a Dragon Ishin that I've actually been kind of disappointed by, that I wasn't expecting to be, is the sub stories. Because I've had some games in the series where I do the plurality, or in some cases, absolutely all of the sub stories, and have a really good time, because usually they dive into the mini games, they have some strong combat challenges, there's usually some sort of arena feature, and they're all over the place, all depending on the game. Here, like in Like a Dragon Ishin, there is some of that, but also this game doubles and triples down on a bond system, where different characters that you meet in the city, you have a bond with them, which is literally a bar you fill up for like how well you like them and they like you. This can range from like, oh, I bought something from a shop for the first time. Now I have a bond with this shop owner, and your character will chat with them a bit, and they'll give you some prize tickets or whatever. But then there's also like some sub stories where it's like, you find a barking dog. This dog, how do you get it to stop barking? You buy a dog bone and you give it to him. You've finished your sub story. Now you have a bond you can do with this barking dog. Oh, here's a sick dog. Oh, here's a hungry cat. Oh, here's a dirty cat. So if I go into my menu and I look at all my bonds, there's 100 plus of them, I'm sure, and a lot of them are just very like, here's a character who likes vegetables. Here's a cat that is supposed to be lucky they have to give money to. Here is another character that just wants to see very particular weapons. Here's a character that you just have to go back to every once in a while, and he'll try out different medicines on you. So usually like a good number, approximately half of the sub stories are just like introducing you to a character to start you off on like, here's another meter you can fill, with usually a very simple interaction. I think there's like 3 different characters that like vegetables. There's like a woman that likes vegetables. There's a boy near the base that wants to be given vegetables.
Yes.
There's another like sexy lady that you want to give cucumbers to because it's very innuendo based or whatever. And it's just like,
great.
There's enough of it that at one point I kind of just started like droning it out or toning it out, just like all right, so basically there's tons of meters that I can fill up, that you get virtue is basically like a social currency that you get for doing side quests. You also do get like gear and items and stuff, but primarily you get virtue, and virtue you spend to like increase your inventory limit, increase how far you can run without being winded, things like that. So it's useful, but it's a lot. At a point, it got very samey. Now there are still sub events that are very classic, Like a Dragon. They're wacky, they're serious, they're challenging, but there's just a ton. There's like 80 in total or something, and I feel like half of them are just like, give this person a thing to fill up a meter. Once the meter is full, you get virtue, and that's kind of it. And so I kind of found myself a little bit disappointed by that, but I state that very mutedly because you can just kind of ignore it. Like it doesn't, like, you can engage with it if you want to, and if you don't want to, you don't have to. So
Yeah,
it's a very
like
muted criticism.
Yeah, this was still like released like in the, like, I think this game like came out right after 5, so it's like it's still like that was still like in during like the time where like the Yakuza series was still trying to like it still had
Blow
like
it
some
up.
of that like legacy, sub story approach on like where like they really stepped it up like with 0 in that front when that came out, but like this is still like because you remember, you think of like 5 sub stories, it like it kind of still had that kind of like lingering stuff, or like there's still like wacky sub stories, but there's still a lot of like kind of mundane ones.
5 was one of the
as well.
games that I did actually go pretty ham on in terms of completionist. I don't think I got like platinum, but I think I did all the sub stories. So I did all the Saejima hunting. I did all the Haruka dancing. My count on so by the time I got to Yakuza 6, I'm like, all right, this game's already shorter than 5, and I'm just gonna mainline it, get it done in like 18 hours, and call it good.
I don't know how you like didn't go, like, I don't know how you came out of like 5 alive doing that. Like, oh my god, 5 was just exhaustive enough, just like played like normally.
Yeah, and then so for Ishin, I think like I said, I'm about 2/3 sub stories, done a few of the mini games, so I'm at least trying to get my fill. but probably won't engage. Like for instance, there's a setup where you go to like your second home and you can do like gardening and things like that. And I'm just like, I'm not interested. Like no real criticism there. I'm just like, I'm not here for that. So I'll just leave that aside for now.
I
And as
think
far
like
as
the strength of it shit is like it's like it gives you a lot of things to do, but you don't have to do any of that. It's just like if you want to, it's just there. This is just fun little activity there. Like with like that second home, there's like a cooking mini game there. Like if you want to see this dude cook, then like you can see him cook, and all that. Are there any like either main story moments or like or sub stories that like stick out in your mind? It's like it's like something just like kind of amused you.
I like the sub story about the American samurai. I don't know,
Yeah.
because he's treated like a joke, and he never quite gets out of that shade. But by the end of it, like all the like the children of the city really respect him because he came on their behalf and rescued them from some jerks. And then but when you're done with that story, you actually can like recruit him for like that recruit side stuff. I'm like, oh, that actually seems like perfectly like, of course you can. I forget exactly how that system works with the soldiers or the troopers is what they call it. Yeah, the trooper card. So like once you finish his side story, you can get this American Samurai trooper card. And I'm like, all right, that's a good way to have these different systems interact. As for main story parts, I kind of like just the there's a section of the story where the Shinsengumi are chasing down this samurai Chosu samurai, who's played by Akiyama. I forget his Kotaru, I believe is his name in this mythos. And basically, Hajime can't give away that he's not actually loyal to the Shinsengumi, so he kind of has to let him escape, but play it up so that it looks like he just loses. But certain people are fooled by it. Certain people are up on the take on it. The thing is in my brain, I always like autocorrect them to like their main series character, like whoever the Saejima stand-in is, Nakamura. I forget what his Nakaguma. I forget what his Ishin's character's name is, but he's like, hey, traitors, be careful, bub. Traitors to the Shinsengumi are put to death. If you're gonna let someone escape, try not to make it so obvious. So there's like good intrigue where certain people know more than they let on, and they'll reveal at a good pace what they know, what they don't know. There's certain cases where people give false names, or there's imposters or things like that, or you're not exactly sure where certain characters' allegiance lie. So there's still a little bit of that like soap opera drama aspect to it that the other games in the series do also have, without going crazy or silly with it. So there's some points about there where I actually find the story quite like pretty gripping and fun to follow, and actually like
I'm curious that you mentioned, like, do you find the story hard to follow, or have you been using like the in-game glossary to like clarify terms?
No, this has been one of the more straightforward stories to follow.
Okay.
In the series, there's still a lot of names, especially like when my brain, like I said, just keeps correcting to their main series names. But like I recognize the faces, so maybe it would be a lot harder to follow if you didn't have that like history, that memory of like where these characters were initially introduced in terms of their likenesses, and you only had their like it was new to all of you. So maybe it's a little bit easier for me because I can just kind of assign in my brain, oh, that's the Akiyama character, oh, that's the Ryoto Goto character, or things like that. Where if that's all new to you, that might be a little bit more difficult because there is quite a large cast of characters. But yeah, I guess I won't go on too much more than that. It's a game that came out in February. I wanted to at least give it its time. I'm enjoying it quite a bit. I was planning on mainlining it, and I ended up putting more time into it than I planned to because I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying the change of scenery. It's got a little bit of different flavor of storytelling. The gameplay is a bit different from the main series. So I don't feel like burnt out because like, oh man, I've played this game 100 times. It doesn't feel like that. So it's definitely one that I think that people who have had any affinity to the Yakuza or Like a Dragon series previously, or have just had any interest, but they're not sure whether they should jump in because they don't have any history. This is definitely a good game to be a jumping on point, at least for how the games play. Obviously, I won't tie into any of the other story, but in terms of just seeing like what an RGG Studios game feels like, this is definitely a good candidate and one that I've been enjoying a lot.
This is like I'm thinking about it's like there's probably like the only foreseeable like a dragon game right now that's like a good one to jump into without any prior knowledge, because I'm thinking of like the other projects. It's like one is like a
Side story with Kiryu.
side story with Kiryu that takes place in between 6 and 7, so you need to know pretty much both games to like
Yeah.
understand the side story. and then you have the follow up to 7 with like a Dragon 8, which you'll probably have to know.
Which is strange because like Yakuza 7, even though it tied back to the other games, you could make an argument, maybe not a great argument, but an argument to say you can jump on here because it had a different protagonist, a different point of view, et cetera, et cetera. But then with 8, they're like, well, actually, it seems like a lot of that stuff that you could kind of, just have a general feel or synopsis for, it's going to be a lot more important because it's going to have the dual protagonist thing going on. And we're like, oh, okay. So we'll see how that all shakes out when that comes out.
I think their gamble was a little bit paying off a little, because at least you saw a lot of new fans jump on with Yakuza 7, and they're like, and then a good chunk of them are like, let me go check the other games. Not like absolutely all of them, but like the other games, like maybe like check look back on 0, or maybe like see like what's going on with like Yakuza 6 and so forth. So
I do like how whenever I see people like, what order should I play the games in or whatever, or things like that, I almost always seem to see the same kind of caveat. Like, and this is true, I feel as well, don't burn yourself out. You do not have to play Yakuza 0 through Yakuza 7 in a row because you will hate yourself. Pace. You have to pace yourself.
These games aren't going to go anywhere, Just,
and they
I get the desire to like feel like catching up, because you want to be be part of the conversation when the new one releases, and like when everyone's checking it out.
Luckily, most of the games outside of like 4 and 5, if you are efficient, you can kind of play in like 15 to 25 hours a piece. So
that's what I did. Like for 7, right? I did my Yakuza marathon, and I just pretty much kind of like mainlined them, just refresh my memory, because it was such like a long time in between 6 and 7, and then with them revamping 7, I'm like, okay, or revamping the formula, like I need to like remember like what was going on in the series. So I just kind of like I did my Yakuza marathon like within the span of what was it, like 3 months, starting from scratch again, and just kind of like mainlining it for the most part.
I don't know how you do that. It took me 3 years to do this. When does that side story game come out? That's slated for this year, right? The Man with No Name or whatever.
Yeah, so we're still waiting to hear more details. I think, call me crazy, but like in between like the announcements of like Ishin's re-release and like 8, like the side story one is like the one I'm most interested in, because like me and my friend are like, we're very like baffled at like how Kiryu was reintroduced in 7, and like we're really curious to see like what kind of we were very curious like the backstory behind that, and there's exactly like kind of like the type of like thing that we want to like connect the dots to that.
And yeah, it is slated for a generic 2023. So
yeah, so I'm very interested. Yeah, I'm excited for that.
And before I hand off the proverbial microphone, I have been playing another game this week. It's not a game I was expecting to play, and it's not a game that we've been covering here on our site, though I do know some other RPG-focused sites have been covering it. It's an indie game that came out either in late March or early April called Dredge. And if you've never heard this title before, we haven't covered it, so let me tee it up at least a little bit. In Dredge, this is kind of like an exploration puzzle type game where you take the role of a fisherman out at sea. So you have like a boat and you have like a bunch of different islands that you can kind of dock at. And the premise of this game is that your character kind of washes up ashore on this fishing village, and basically you are put to task by the village's mayor to go out and essentially catch fish, sell them for money to pay off your loan, help rebuild the town. And as you do this, you kind of unearth a bunch of like spooky secrets and mysteries and weird occult happenings that are kind of going on in this area. The game has a very like moody, atmospheric, not quite horror vibe, but kind of that unsettling vibe. The way that this game was marketed is that it starts out like the guy's just catching like trout and flounder and snappers and selling them, giving them to the fishmonger and getting money. But then the more he goes fishing, the stranger they are. There's fish that have like extra eyes, or there's fish that have no scales, or
just like in real life.
Like it
You
gets
know?
incredible. Like some of the it's a 2D kind of like water painting type art. So it's some of the way they describe some of these is absolutely disgusting, but it's not like unpleasant to look at. Like for instance, you catch some squid where the tentacles are replaced with tongues, and
Yeah.
basically the whole idea is that like you find these like abominable things the further out you go, the longer you fish. What the hell is going on? It's supposed to put you like on edge a little bit. And how this works is that you start out with some very basic fishing capability on your boat. You can like catch shallow fish or coastal fish. You can't venture out very far. If you venture out at night, you start to like your character has like it's not called panic in games, it's called something else, but it's basically like a panic meter where you start to like see hallucinations the further out you go if you don't have light or if you're not near a
Almost like a
dock.
sanity meter, like in like Eternal Darkness or some shit like that.
Yeah, it basically is a sanity meter. And so basically when you're starting out, you're like you're resting to only go out at the very brightest of days, not going out very far, catching some very basic fish, selling your catch in order to pay off your loan or upgrade your boat or give yourself new capability. As you go on, you get the ability to like lay crab pots, and like you can kind of like lay different like cages that you can return to catch fish, or you can have a net that trawls behind your boat that just kind of passively catches fish, or you get the ability to like uh hyper speed your boat, like zoom, like I don't know, like
When you do like the act of fishing, like how does like the fishing system work? Is it like kind of like an automatic thing, or do you actually have like fine control over like the fishing that you do like with a rod or something?
it's a kind of a very basic fishing mini game where it's like a sliding meter that has like a reticle on it that you have to press. You have to have certain button presses when the reticle is in certain places. So if you've played any fishing mini game in any RPG, it's a variant of kind of the same sort of thing, but certain fish have like different, like the meters are different shapes or different sizes, or they
Oh,
flow a
okay.
little bit differently.
That's fun.
So you'll see like fishing spots out in the sea, and that'll identify where the fish is. And then when you go to it, if you've got the proper capability on your boat, whether it's a coastal fish or a shallow fish, or maybe you're out further out and you need an oceanic fish, so therefore you need the oceanic capable rod. It'll either tell you you don't have the equipment to grab this, or if you do, it'll let you go through the mini game. You can only have limited amount of space in your cargo, so certain fish, if you catch like flounder or whatever, you can fit up a whole bunch. If you catch like marlins or swordfish, they take up a lot more space. So it's very a grid-based inventory system. Like I guess the vogue thing right now is Resident Evil 4. It's a very similar sort of thing where you have to slot and rotate and put it in your cargo in a way that it'll fit.
Nice.
You can spend. Go ahead.
Is there like with your inventory slides? Is that like does that like correlate with like the type of boat that you have? Like is there like boat customization to like expand your inventory or cargo slots?
Yeah, so you can expand. There's basically two progression systems. There is research, and research allows you to basically develop better rods, better crab pots, better nets. So you can get a rod that catches both coastal and oceanic fish. And then later you'll be near a volcano. You can catch a rod that catches volcano fish. Or you'll get a deep sea rod that catches what they call abyssal fish. That's where you get like the lantern fish and things like that. So you like research better equipment and better lights, better engines, better nets. And then there's like a dry dock ship upgrade, ship hull, where it's not your equipment, it's the boat itself. And you like can dredge up lumber and metal and cloth and like resources that you can then use to upgrade how many slots you have in your cargo, both in terms of just raw slots that you have, like just literal just space, and also like now you can fit in a larger engine or two fishing rods or more headlamps, so you can like go out further at night because you'll have more, like it actually like measures it in like lumens and meters in terms of like how far your headlamps actually travel out and how much they protect you. So those are the two main progression systems. The story it's very like moody and atmospheric. You'll encounter different characters on different islands. A lot of them will have like an implied history, like we used to whale here, like we're a whaling town, but all the whales are gone. So basically this town is on the out and out. People are moving away. Certain people gotten lost. A lot of them have kind of very spooky undertones. Like there was this this mayor of this little town that started to go crazy and started throwing everything out to sea, and then eventually walked into sea himself and disappeared. The main plot is that you encounter this character in this very spooky manner that is just like, hey, I need you to find me 5 relics. And these relics are like, I believe it's like a ring, an anchor, a manifest. I forget exactly what it is. But basically that's the main plot is you're finding these very creepy artifacts in the different regions of the world and bringing it back to him. And he kind of like casts spells on you. At least that's the way it's described, where it's like, now I'm going to give your boat the ability to warp back to me whenever you want. So the boat will, like, if you cast the spell, the boat will disassemble itself and reassemble itself back near his manor. So it's kind of got this gameplay function where it's like a warp, but also it's like, what the hell is this guy's like deal? Like, should I be helping him or not? I don't know. And there's actually been like some hints. I don't know how this game ends or how it works in terms of a narrative, but there's this character who's like this lighthouse keeper who's like, I don't know what you think you're doing, but you should see if there's another way. So I don't know if there's sort of this thing where it's like, you should not do, like, you're prescribed to do this one thing, but maybe you shouldn't do it that way because this guy might not have like the best intentions in mind for why does he want you to gather all these artifacts? I don't know. So talking about this game here, is this game an RPG? Not really, but it has like some of the puzzle elements. It has some progression. I do like the game for being kind of, it hits a very fun tone in terms of it's not scary, but it's a game that does still kind of feel better to play like, when it's bright or with your lights on rather than like in your cave in the middle of the night and in the pure darkness, because it does get a little bit moody and it's got like a soundtrack that backs it. It gets creepy, especially if you like reading like tooltips or text. Because the way the game describes the fish you're catching, how these like characters look and act, it's a very, very particular feeling that it evokes when you play it. And it's not a bad one. It's just a different one. It's not one that a lot of games I think go for. But it also kind of, it's the sort of game where it's like, it's midnight, your panic meter is elevating. You're still like a few meters away from the nearest dock. You hope you're not going to like get caught by something unseemly, and then when you finally dock, you actually kind of exhale and you're like, "Whew, I made it, I'm fine." So not a lot of games have that sort of like, I won't say not a lot, but I haven't played a game recently that had that sort of like tension to it without being a turnoff. Some games like there's a little bit of tension to it and you're like, nope, I'm not interested. I play games to relax, not to stress out. But this game just strikes a really good balance of giving you just enough tension to actually be like engaging and it kind of exciting to play. So that's Dredge at a high level. I think we put in, me and my girlfriend have been playing it. I think we put in like 12 hours and we've gone to like 3 of the 5 major regions. So my guess would be it's like a 15-hour game or so. So not pretty breezy. There's some side quests that you can do. Like for instance, I found a side quest where I found an abandoned dog, on a beach, and then I had to find a home for him. And I was able to like find a lonely researcher at an outpost who was trying to study like sonar waves and different old equipment to try to keep the monsters at bay. And she was like, I'm lonely, no one else is assigned here, so you can kind of give her the dog. And it's kind of fun because now when you go back to her to like just to engage with her or talk to her or do any shopping, in her portrait, like the dog's now in the background. So there's little things like that are just kind of like little fun little excursions, little side things that you don't have to do, but it's a sort of game that you can kind of be fun to make sure, like almost like Wind Waker, where you go to every single island has a little tiny story, even if it only takes 10 or 15 minutes, just to kind of engage with and kind of see what there is to see there. And I don't know, it's kind of been a fun surprise, and I wanted to at least give it a little bit of a shout out here because it came out recently and I've enjoyed it a bit, and I think it would be in the sort of place that readers or listeners to our site would find some enjoyment out of.
That seems cool. I mean, like it has a shitload of fucking overwhelmingly positive reviews on Steam as well. So
is it overwhelmingly positive?
Yeah.
Oh, neat.
So yeah, it's a hot topic, at least in those spaces. Like I've heard the name, but I never really knew what it was. So you know, I've learned a lot here.
Mm-hmm.
Like the only thing I knew, like vaguely going in, was like people describing it's like FTL, but with like I've been fishing. I'm like, that seems neat, but like it seems way more than that.
It's much slower pace than FTL. FTL, I remember late in that game, I'm like, shit, something's on fire. Shit, the airline's up. It's been several years since I played that game, but I remember that game. I feel like it's a lot of twitch reaction speed, where Dredge has a lot more space for planning and like, all right, today my goal is to do this, and like you can kind of take it day by day, like in-game day, in terms of like being methodical. So it is kind of like FTL, but at like half speed
Okay.
to its benefit, I think. And the last game we have slotted here to talk about is I was asking the cast here what we wanted to put in the last slot here. And then true to himself, I asked Chow, and Chow was like, you know what? I'm going to play a game from 20 years ago because that's who I am. So
Good. I wish I was you.
No, I'm being cheeky, but I really do genuinely enjoy this because this is a game that I was not aware of, and I'm excited to, in the next few minutes, learn more about. Chow has been playing a game called Venus and Braves, and to tee us up a tiny bit, I went ahead and did research, and by research I mean I googled this. I went to the Wikipedia page. This is a Namco RPG that came out on the PS2 in 2003, only in Japan. As far as I can tell, it's a standalone title. Though it did have
it's actually a sequel.
It is actually. All right, I'm wrong. So I'll hand off. So Chow, you've been playing Venus and Braves. At first, I just ask like, what brought you back to this game in 2023, and like, what are your thoughts on it?
It's been 20 years, and that's exactly why I want to finish this game back in the day because I love the main music, the main theme. The main theme is awesome, but apparently there's some kind of lawsuit going on. Someone saying that you stole my music. I demand you to remove it. It's a waltz, for crying out loud. So I don't know what the hell they're doing. Everyone's trying to sue people for all kinds of things these days. But anyways, it's a sequel to a game called Seven, the Knights of The Knights of Mormoth. Seven, I had never played Seven, so I can't tell you exactly what Seven is. But apparently this game is loosely connected to Seven. So let's give a brief rundown on how this game plays like. This is an extremely complicated game to play. I think you need like the galaxy brain to play this game. It's kind of like
I remember the battle system looking fucking crazy.
you need so it's like so the basic battle UI looks like Ogre Battle, if you get what I'm saying. The characters are placed on a grid, a 3x4 grid, and then and there's an enemy in the front, right? So it looks like Ogre Battle on the front, but the game does not play anything like Ogre Battle.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened is that your characters in the front can only attack the boss, and then the people in the middle kind of not really do anything, and the people in the back will use their support abilities. And so every time like the people in the front attacks, your turn is over, and you're given the opportunity to swap the people in the middle into the front, and the people in the front will go all the way to the back.
Yeah,
and
like
then,
you can rotate them like per turn or something.
Yeah,
right?
yes. But to make it even more complicated, this game has like a generation system, right? So that you're, like Fire Emblem, how the kids can pass their abilities.
You like Agarest?
Sort of, I don't play Agarest, so I can't tell you. So now you have that to the mix. It's like now you're like, wait, but if I rotate my position, then those people might not end up together because now I'm messing up my rotations, right? So there's a lot of like thinking ahead and shit to it, right? And yeah, there's also permadeath. With that too. So it makes it very.
It's actually a pretty aggravating game from what I remember. Like I played this was like also on PS2, but I only played the PS2 version.
Yeah, so it's a very difficult game. And if you get like hurt in your battle, you become fatigued in your next battle. So it's like it makes it like you have to plan very far ahead with this game.
I remember okay, so like the battles like kind of look like an isometric, like four people are lined up in front of the boss, but then there's like a grid at like the bottom right corner that like shows you their positions, right?
Yeah.
So like I remember part of that system is like there's like percentages over them. I think they kind of look like chess pieces on that board, and there's like percentages. I forgot what the percentages did.
Those percentages, it's like their HP, if I remember.
Is it just their HP? Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of that simple. But like I'm saying, there's too much things. Like it's very complicated because of all the generation system that you have to put in. And the reason why there's a generation system, it goes with the storyline, right? So in this game, you play as a guy with a very edgy name. His name is Blood Bowl, but people just call him Blood.
Hell yeah.
It's like, I was like, oh yeah, it's like my name is Blood, and everyone just calls him Blood, and I don't think it's like edgy, But anyways, Blood runs this Golem Brigade. So there is At the start of the game, there's like 4 members. Okay, there is what is it? There is the caretaker of them. Like she's treated like kind of like the caretaker. She's like taking care of everyone's laundry, does everything like their housework. There is what is it? There's like a gluten in the party. He's reckless and he does a lot of stupid things. I think his name is Whippy. I can't really say his name. It's like Whippy. I think that's how you say his name. And then there is a veteran in the group who's like their teacher. His name is Warris. And then he's like the mentor figure to everybody in the team. And then there is also one more guy named Galif. Galif likes to have kids. That's kind of like his motivation. He's just like, that's like, I just want to have kids. I like children. That's kind of like it, right, for him. Anyways, there's like a bunch of brigade that will kill any monsters, that comes into their city, and they'll protect the city from danger. And one day there's a mysterious woman that tells Blood that that there's one guy that's a liability to your team. I think Blood already knows who the liability is, but he doesn't want to dismiss him, right? Because it's like, why would I do that? It's like, he's my friend. I'm not going to kick him out of my team, right? And then it's like you had to do that. If you have him stay in your team, he's going to be a liability, and your team's not going to get stronger. And he's like,
it's important to note that like Blood is always like alive during all these generations, right? Like I think like Blood's like immortal, so like
yes, but that will come into the plot later, right?
Yeah, okay.
You'll find out later. And then there's one incident where Ripple, he's the gluten guy, right? He likes to eat, and one day he bought this dragon lizard tail or something like that. And then people were like, are you an idiot? It's like, there's no way they would sell like dragon material in the town. You probably got duped or something like that. And then he decided to eat that dragon tail and had a massive stomach ache when they were fighting like a like a giant monster. And everyone's like, "Oh, I got a stomach ache." Then it's like, and everyone's like, "Oh my god!" It's like, we have to run from this battle because you have a stomach ache. And then I guess that was at the snapping point that Blood had to dismiss him from the party, right? And you're kind of like forced to do it because if you don't dismiss him, you just can't progress with the game. It's like the illusion of choices is like, can I keep him? No, you cannot keep him. And then, and the next part is that mysterious woman comes in and tells Blood that, hey, that mentor figure in it, you only got 5 years left. He's gonna die if you bring him. And Blood chose to ignore those warnings because he is lonely. He needs companionship. So he decides to bring him along. Even though, like, he doesn't believe the woman's words of that he's gonna die. And anyways, you encounter like the main kind of like antagonist for most of the story in this part. And I think one of the incident is that the Galif, the guy that likes kids, decided to rescue this little kid that's in danger, that's out of town. And so he's like, the main character decides to leave the town so that they can save him. And that mysterious woman tells Blood, it's like, are you an idiot? It's like, you choose to save your 2 friends? It's like, if you do that, the entire town's going to be destroyed. It's like, and then it's like, yeah, I don't care. I'm going to save my friends. And then he did save his friends. And yes, the town becomes completely destroyed and his mentor figure died. And then it's like, then we finally find out who this mysterious woman is. She is the goddess. And the goddess is the one that gave Blood immortality.
Oh yeah, okay, that's right. Yeah,
yes. Yeah. So he has immortality. That's why there's this gimmick of generations and stuff. So Blood killed this gigantic monster back 300 years ago. I think they call him.
I have to ask: does Blood knows? Like, he doesn't have any amnesia or any memory fogginess?
He knows.
Like
he knows.
Oh,
he just
okay.
doesn't. He just wants to ignore these things. He's
Okay.
a very lonely guy. Okay, so because he sees all his friends die over time, so he doesn't want to be lonely anymore. Like every time a friend dies or someone close to him die, he would engrave that dead person's name onto his arm, like a tattoo of like all his dead friends. So
oh, man. That's right. Oh god.
So yeah, this is a very depressing game. So literally, like every time it's like, okay, so the goddess revealed herself. She has no human empathy, so she doesn't understand why Blood would do these things. Like she just keeps thinking, you just need to accomplish this task. So in the end, it's like the reason why she prepped him for this and why she gave him like immortality when he defeated this monster is because in 100 years from now, the god of destruction will come in, and she wants him to destroy the prep for this battle to destroy the god of destruction because she is the god of prophecy. She knows the future, and she needs to prep him for this incident, right? And the story goes into like, okay, so the first time I fucked up because I ignored the goddess's warnings. The second time I tried to like listen to her words, but I still fucked up. So this game's like you always fucked up no matter what you do. And I guess it kind of like goes right eventually, but like no matter what you do, it's like you get it's like Odin's Sphere. It's like people trying to like prevent the prophecy from happening, but it still happens anyways because they either they choose to ignore it or they choose to follow it, you know? Like there's villains in the story, and those villains is the one that kills the mentor figure at the beginning. I think they're like part of this dragon that the humans were trying to enslave at one point, and he's working with another human that seems to have immortality, and then they're trying to like they're trying to summon the god of destruction, so they're creating the problem, you know, because of how they were treated. So that's kind of like the general plot line. You're basically have 100 years to prep to destroy to fight the god of destruction, basically. So that's kind of like Venus of Brave in a nutshell.
I forgot how like the progression went. I forgot if there are actually like normal mobs you fight, or if it was like only like bosses, pretty much. I remember there were more
A
bosses.
lot of mobs are basically like boss fights in my
Okay.
opinion. So basically how the game goes, it's like your characters don't exactly level up, but every time they fight, their weapon proficiency gets better. And then because it takes time to go anywhere, so let's say you're in the world's map, right? You take one step, that's a day. So just walking to the boss probably will take you like a couple months, right? Because of how fast the time moves, but in
Yeah.
the world's map. How the level up system works is by your age. So your character has a peak performance age and then a declining performance age. So let's say your character is 20 years old and they'll hit the prime at like 38. Like their stats will reach that's their prime. And once they're like over 38 years old,
Oh
their
yeah, you can
stats
like
go
actually like screw yourself over if you actually land on the boss like at like, and everyone's like not at a good age
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah, so once your age is
Fuck.
like past your peak, then you start to get negative stat gain when you level up or when you get older. So that's how the game.
It's just like real life, man.
So this game is like very like mechanic heavy. It's like you have a lot of planning and a lot of things to do. But like I said, like a lot of it could be cheesed through like the generation system. Like you can make like a very powerful kid because you know the kids have kind of like the benefits of the parents, right? They'll be like, oh yeah, this guy's parent is a knight and this is a priest. Priest has very shitty stats or defensively, right? And while the knight is good, you know, with physical strength and all that crap, and then so the kid will have none of those drawbacks. So now you probably have a priest, but with the with the stats of a knight. So now you're like, now that is a very tanky character now, right? So a lot of so I guess you would take the generation system to your favor, right? Like so like the first generation of character, like I guess like how the game is treated, it's like there's like several arcs per generation. Like the first character like that I mentioned, like with the gluten and all those people, like it's like once they find out like that Blood needs to face a battle in 100 years, they all decide, no, we. It's like there's no way we'll be alive in 100 years, so they're like, you're on your own now, Blood, and so that's kind of like how the game goes. Like story characters will not suffer from the permadeath system in this game, so they're just kind of like knocked out. But if there's a story like if there's a like the generic character you recruit, if they died, it's permadeath. At least your progress does not completely go to waste because of the items they use. There might be some proficiency that you can at least give it to somebody else. So at least that's kind of like the mechanics in this game. I would say
Namco ever re-release this game?
I would hope so, but I don't know. There's a lot of things happening. I mean, it's been 20 years. Like a man could dream.
Look, a lot of people don't even know this game exists.
Like, okay, like basically in the storyline, if you love Odin Sphere, you'll love the story because there is lots of like trying to deny fate or trying to embrace what fate is, like your destiny, like that kind of idea. It even has this like similar approach with the ending too. It's kind of cool.
Did it have
So,
branching and like multiple endings? Oh,
I'm not sure there is multiple endings. I think there
okay.
might be like but by the end of the game when you beat it, it's kind of like the Fire Emblem traditional endings, right? It'll tell you like the storyline of it's like what happened to this character after from this time. It's like blah 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 blah. It's like little paragraphs explaining what happened to that person, right?
I forgot. It's like my memory is so, but like the one memory I have in this game is like the battles. UI look crazy. I barely remember the rest
It's
of this
like,
game.
but yeah, it's definitely a classical, I would say.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's fuck, man. I never thought I'd hear about this game ever again. Pretty much.
if you're ever interested, at least listen to the main theme of this game. It's like, and tell me if that music has been stolen or not. But it is a very good listen. Give it a look. Just type in Venus and Brave, the vaults for area, and that's the main theme right there.
Yeah, and for people like who also like don't know, like this game also did get a remake like in 2011, and it has like cameos from like Tales of characters in it.
Yes, it was
Cool.
the PSP version.
Yeah, so when I pulled this Wikipedia page up back, when we started the discussion of this game, at the bottom it's like other links, Tales series. I'm like, wait, what? Oh, it's because in the PSP remake, they're like, how do we? We're Nameco. Yeah, you recognize these characters, right? You can have Colette and Kless and a few others.
And people got really upset about that. It's like they felt like they were out of place because they would be like, they'll be like throwing like these generic Tales anime art versus the people in Venus and Braves, which looks completely different art
Oh,
wise. So everyone's like kind of upset when they were first announced that. I don't know. It's people gets upset when people find like their settings don't match or something like that.
Yeah,
mhm.
but it is definitely like a unique game. Like that, there still isn't like quite a game like it in terms of like how it rolls out like its mechanics and how that gets like how it deals with generation system plus the way it like it deals with its battle. Because like since rotation is such a big part of it, you kind of have to like there'll be like some parts of battles that we have to compromise. Like you need to have like because of how boss behavior works on a rotation, like you kind of have to like work it into your favor, like of like dealing with like boss cycles because of like you want like certain character archetypes to be at this position and this boss turn, or else they're gonna fucking wipe like a certain row if you mismanage like a certain position.
Yeah, it is definitely a very difficult game in my opinion.
But it's more comprehensible than something like Unlimited Saga.
So Chow, have
Yes,
you ever seen the credits of this game? Have you ever cleared it?
I have seen the credits,
All right.
and I love the ending. It kind of reminds me of Odin Sphere's ending, and it's like okay if you're really good at recognizing like the voice actors, uh, it's like you kind of find out who the narrator is like at the beginning of the game. There's a narrator that kept talking about what the hardships that blood goes through, but it's like how would this person know? It's like, well, not many people have immortality, but it's just like if you could recognize the voice, like, oh, he already spoke who the narrator is, which is quite interesting for this game.
Oh, is that the big twist at the end? Is the perspective of the story as a certain,
It's told from the narrator, and it's like,
no,
oh
and
wait,
and then it reveals who the narrator is. That's
yeah.
kind of neat.
So yeah, so that's this game in a nutshell.
No, thanks for I always kind of enjoy when we close out our games talk section on one of your experiments, and it's kind of interesting and kind of makes me wish that it's been even the remake of this game is 12 years old at this point. So don't know if there's any chance, snowball's chance in an oven that we'll ever see this revisited again, but it seems kind of fun. Is there a fan translation available or no?
I think someone's trying to like translate a few things and just give up. So there's no fan
Um,
translation.
no. You're just like tough luck. No. No, but
It's like
no, thanks
I'm
for
not sure we're strong in this game because it's all in Japanese and it's like a hard read or something. Uh, it's like I don't know. I love how there's one YouTube video in YouTube that gave it a review and gave it a 0 out of 5, saying the characters talk too much.
That's
It's like,
awesome.
is that a problem?
That's funny.
There it is.
No, thank you, Chow, for taking the opportunity to talk to us about a little-known Namco RPG from a while back, Venus and Brave. And we will likely never see it in English, so it's a good game to learn Japanese for. Sounds like it's a very hard read.
Yeah, I would say so.
All right, well, we've already called out most of the site features, and we've gone through our Games Talk section. There are a few other site features up on the site that we'll just roll through here right before we go into the news, which is pretty light this week. James, over the last week, has put up 2 features up on the site as well, in addition to the ones from Scott that we talked about earlier. He put up a feature for the Etrian Mystery Dungeon, which originally came out in 2015. And James, what was your thesis here about your article? It's time for Etrian Mystery Dungeon to get another chance, and like what spurred this publishing this week?
Well, originally I was trying to time it up with the anniversary of the localization on the 7th. Didn't quite make it, but the idea is that we're getting these remasters of the first 3 Etrian Odyssey games.
Mm-hmm.
But I remembered that, well, we never got Etrian Mystery Dungeon 2, so I looked it up, and apparently, like, Etrian Mystery Dungeon 2 was the last, like, truly new game in both the Etrian Odyssey series and the Mystery Dungeon series. Because, like, we had Etrian Odyssey Nexus, but that wasn't really a new game so much as a best of collection. And you had the remake of the original Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, but that was like a remake of a game that already existed. So for 2 franchises that are maybe not the biggest, but definitely like have renown to them,
Had their following,
yeah, the most recent new game from both of those series just has never been seen outside of Japan.
As Trey mentioned, Mystery Dungeon 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
It would be a shame if, especially now that the eShop is dead, that if we never had a chance to play that game. And it's like, it's a Mystery Dungeon game. You could easily get them working on Switch or something. It would be really nice if we got like a collection of the first 2 or something. I don't know.
When is that remake slated for? Or not, or remaster, bundle set, whatever it is?
It's May, isn't it? I think.
Adam, help.
I mean, you can try to go. I'm gonna go Etrian Steam. See what does it? The last day of May 31st.
Sweet. Well, hopefully that'll do well, and we'll at least get the opportunity to get those series, both Etrian Odyssey or Mystery Dungeon, kind of on Switch, on PC, playable for modern audiences, and hopefully get the opportunity to revisit those and see games like Mystery Dungeon 2 that we never got over here in the West. So yeah, James put up his feature about Etrian Mystery Dungeon up on the site. And then also in the last week, James was able to attend an in-person event sponsored by Humble Games for another indie project that is slated to release later this year. And that is a game called Stray Gods. And does it have a subtitle? Yeah, Stray Gods, the role-playing musical, which I've heard about this game a little bit over the years. It was originally kickstarted a few years back, if I recall correct, under a different title called Chorus. I do know that it kind of got rebranded a little bit because I think that name was another project had taken it. But so James, I don't remember exactly how it came to be that you were able to attend this event by Humble Games for Stray Gods. And this is not a game that we have covered in a lot of detail on the site as is. So just kind of tee us up, like, what is this game? How did you learn about it? How was the event? And like, what were your thoughts?
So over the last like half a year or so, I've been getting these. I guess ever since I did that Square Enix thing in September, I guess I must have been put on a list at 47, which is this. For anyone that's not in the industry, they're a PR company that handles stuff for a bunch of different companies. Excuse me. And since I'm in the LA area, I've been getting these invites to a bunch of different things. It's how I got the chance to play, preview Gotham Knights last year. I got an invite to a Forspoken thing that I wasn't able to attend because I got COVID, and a bunch of other things. So basically, I just like I get back from the Star Wars Jedi Survivor press event, and I immediately in my inbox I had this invite to this night where they kind of talked about the game and went over the ideas for Stray Gods. And it's interesting because it's a narrative, it's a musical RPG, and they even call it an RPG, so it's something we would want to cover regardless. But it's so you play narrative RPGs, and it's like basically similar to visual novels or adventure games where you make choices and branching paths, that sort of thing. The kind of I don't want to call it a gimmick because it's basically the core gameplay loop of this one, at least from how it was described and how they showcased it through an example on the stage, is that you make your choices, but it's not in between these like musical numbers. It's in the middle of songs, and there's like multiple choices in the songs. So literally the music itself can radically change based off of the choices you make in the middle of the song. And a lot of the night was dedicated to kind of explaining how exactly that worked, and basically how they had to kind of like record the vocals first in like chunks, and then they composed this like the song after that. Like they like added to it and like to back up the vocals afterwards. And it's like it's going to be interesting to see how this works in practice, because like it's one thing to kind of give an example on the stage, like a pre-rehearsed like complete song on a stage, which they used to showcase, and they had like these like lights to kind of signify when a choice was made, which I think is a neat way of like giving people the idea of what it's supposed to look like and how it's supposed to work. But it's one thing for something like that to like go over well on the stage. It's another thing entirely to see, okay, is this going to work as a game when things have to be timed and edited and all that sort of thing, and it's not just like pre-rehearsed. But yeah, it was an interesting little event, and I almost cheekily said, well, would this count as a preview? Because it's like if the gameplay itself is the musical stuff, and they're showcasing how it's supposed to work. But yeah, it was an interesting time, and I'm excited to see what the game itself feels like. Apparently, there's going to be a demo early next month, so I guess we don't
I
have to
wasn't aware
wait
of
too
that.
long to see how it works out. But yeah,
Yeah, they released a new trailer for it too, and like it was hard to like kind of get a sense of like how the game actually goes. So like I think it's the type of game that's like it's just like it's one of those things like you just have to kind of play it for yourself and see how it goes. I think it's an incredibly hard type of concept to kind of like market and try to describe. Even like even having to hold an event to like kind of get like the gist of like the flow of it. I think it's an interesting concept. It's just I imagine this is very hard to kind of just like describe just because of the
yeah,
intrinsic nature of the game is just so ebb and flow.
yeah. It's like one of those things where it's inevitably a game where it's really, really easy to be skeptical about how well it will work in practice. But on the same token, it's absolutely one of those things where it's you hear the concept, you hear what they're going for, you understand how much work it must have been to get this working, and it's like, man, I hope
Yeah.
it lands. This sounds like something really cool. If they can manage it, that would be awesome. So,
Yeah, I definitely want to check out that demo next month and just it has to be. I think it's one of those things like the demo in some respects may make or break it, for a lot of people.
yeah, yeah.
It's inventive enough that you can't just say, "Oh, it's like this other game or like this other game." Well, it's like, well, it's got like timed dialogue choices, but back to music, and it's all got to flow together. So it'd be interesting to see if they ever make some of that behind the scenes information available publicly about exactly what technical things need to be considered in order to say, like, we want to give the players agencies, and if these things have kind of like divergent
Well,
narratives, but it's got to have. Go ahead.
There's a VOD of the stream where like
Oh,
the first half of the event, they actually, it was part of a live stream, and they were very open about like how hard it was to get this working and what they had to do. Like full props are being completely transparent on, it's like like one of the things they said at the beginning of the event is like, at first we wondered why nobody had tried this before, and now we can definitively say it's because
it's really, really hard.
it's really, really hard.
As I get older, I kind of really like, now they tell me that there's those VODs, I might ask for a link on that just as some casual watching. Also in like the last week, I've watched some behind the scenes stuff on one of last year's games, Pentiment. And I'm only bringing that up as just, it was another kind of behind the scenes of how what it takes to put these games together, like in that game's case, during COVID, and probably in this game's case as well. I looked up, I misspoke. It wasn't Kickstarter, it was Fig back in 2019. This game back then was called Chorus, an adventure musical, and now it's called Stray Gods, the role-playing musical. So back in 2019 was when it was originally crowdfunded, and then it has kind of been in development shift since then, currently slated to release in August. And I wasn't aware of the demo next month, so that'll be really interesting to watch the VOD, go hands-on, and see exactly how this game is put together. Because it sounds like it's really kind of quite inventive in a way that it's hard to draw comparisons to other projects because there really isn't any that has tackled the same thing. So James has those two features up on the site for both the Etrian Mystery Dungeon look back and the Stray Gods kind of preview, or at least event impressions piece. And yeah, we'll potentially have a chance to look at the demo in the next month or so to see how we feel going hands-on, or at the very least when the game releases later this summer. With that, we'll go into the news section of this podcast, and this is pretty light. And looking at the different headlines this week, I ended up finding that the major two headlines of this week's podcast are very similar to what we saw last week. So last week, we spent a good chunk of time talking about two of the biggest games for the summer, especially for our site. And that's, of course, Final Fantasy XVI and Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. So last week we had a new trailer and some PAX footage for Final Fantasy XVI, and then we had a 10-minute gameplay demo for Tears of the Kingdom. This week, what we have a new state of play 20 minutes of footage of Final Fantasy XVI, and then an additional final trailer for Tears of the Kingdom. So these two games, like, I always feel kind of like I'm doing them both a disservice by like pairing them together, but they always just seem to like the information is coming together for both these games, and one's obviously coming out in May, one's coming out later in the summer. So, and obviously from completely different types of games and completely different studios. So I put here listed first, obviously for our site's bread and butter, the state of play, the 20 minutes of footage that we got from Final Fantasy 16. So we've talked about this game quite a bit in the last month as a ton of details have come out. We've gotten a lot of raw gameplay footage, gotten to see a lot of the environments, exactly how this game will play, tons of new combat footage, a little bit more detail on the story premise. I wrote a few notes to myself for this state of play footage just to kind of make, without diving too deep into it, just kind of make some notes exactly what was shown here. But in general, I really enjoyed this look in here for Final Fantasy 16. It's made me really excited for the game. I don't know if other people felt the same way. I know some people like Adam, they're on board whether they watch the footage or not, but I don't know if there was anyone that took a look at this state of play and thought that it was as equally impressed as I was.
It was probably the most effective piece of marketing they've done for the game. Compared to everything they've shown before this, everything before this felt like a fucking joke. This is
yeah.
This was okay, finally actually show how this game progresses. You actually see what the game looks like from when you pick up the controller and you start playing the game.
It feels like all the marketing beforehand was very drip fed, just bits and pieces, and now this is just the floodgates opening, and it's everything that I wanted to see and probably a bit that I didn't want to see, I saw. And I was gonna play it day one regardless, but this is definitely this has definitely taken my hype levels from, well, I'm excited for it, I guess, and I'm gonna play it. I know it's gonna be good, to, oh yeah, I forgot. This is the game that Creative Business Unit 3 has been working on essentially since work on Heavensward wrapped. That's been a long time. They've put a lot of time and money into this. It shows.
I remember when this game was first shown, way back when a lot of people, the immediate comparison people made was Witcher. I think that comparison is still somewhat valid, but I remember people at the time thinking like, is this next gen? Does this look like a new Final Fantasy game? It was very understated. But now I feel like this is them just kind of like just Square Enix kind of flexing in a way that we haven't seen since like Final Fantasy 13 era, early PS3, where they're just like, all right, we've got so many different environments here. This 20 minutes of footage, about half of it is like combat footage, either from the straight action RPG Clive battle footage or the icon battles. That's actually kind of what they closed on in this 20 minutes of footage was the icon battle footage, which I feel kind of strange diving directly into that first. But I remember when I was first described, I thought like, these are just going to be like interactive cutscenes or QTEs, or they might be a little bit, they'll be okay, but they'll be spectacle more than substance. But then the more they show of it, the more I'm like realizing actually maybe not. Maybe they've got something here, because they've got like some icon battles that are like twin stick shooters or like bullet hells or like more similar to the straight gameplay, only now you're controlling Ifrit instead of Clive. Like I look at these icon battles and I'm like, man, maybe these are actually quite significant, like truly spectacles and not just style over substance.
But like for me, the icon battles are like, I think they're just like they're spectacles for sure. They look nice. They're eye catching for sure. But like it's like one of those things, like they're very isolated instances of gameplay, like unique gameplay to me, right? It's like it's a nice thing, but I don't think like overall it's not like that's not really the thing that I'm like that catches my eye in this game. Like I'm more interested about like how gameplay mechanics work, like how like the Odin icon, like that. It's more about like the implications of like what the icons can do, like the Odin icon style, for example. Like you're building up for a more substantial Zanetsuken, while you can definitely activate a more less version of Zanetsuken. You want like you're ideally trying to charge up like the Odin icon style to perform like the max enhanced version of Zanetsuken, which is basically a judgment cut from Devil May Cry, and that's like, oh, that's really cool. How will you what are the how well does it like synergize with other icon gameplays and styles, and like managing cooldowns, and what sorts of like kind of like you're starting to think of like what sorts of builds should you striving towards, like when they start showing off like the ability tree. And like it shows like the nice modern quality of life things that like modern games do, like when you're at an ability tree, it shows like a video clip of like exactly what that ability does, and then like it shows some of them can be upgraded to like for further effects and like more damage. You see other quality of life things, like when you show side quests, you can go directly teleport and warp to like the side quests of like NPC. You have to go looking for them, like going through a town. Like there's a nice quality of life feature to just go boom boom boom, go from one side quest NPC to the next. It's instant teleportation pretty much. And like it being like developed like right now PS5 exclusivity in mind, they can start having maybe fulfilling the prophecy of like minimal to no loading times, or no loading times in general. And I just think a lot about those sorts of things of like I just kind of appreciate in this like extended look finally that like you just kind of get to see more of like what you're doing as an actual person playing through this video game, and shout outs to all the people who were mid fans for all this time in the Final Fantasy fandom. You got your redemption. We have a new mid in a Final Fantasy game. If people don't remember, Mid was Sid's grandson from Final Fantasy V. Obviously, Mid is not that same character. Mid is a woman now in Final Fantasy 16. All that
definitely
stuff.
Seen some people making a funny, like just a kind-hearted joke where it's like, "Wow, HRT is amazing."
Yeah, so like but like Mid in this game looks great. Like she has a really long braid, and like I think of like Milia Rage from Guilty Gear. Like if they ever like to get into combat, but like it's just nice to see that like that's always what left me kind of like wanting in like all previous versions like FF16. It's like, yeah, this is cool. They got to show a little like blip of gameplay again, and like kind of like they're showing. It was more like talking, like more than showing, because like obviously with like almost like most of the times we got to see FF16 was always some sort of media tour with like extended interviews, and they kept talking and talking and talking about like you'll do like different 7-icon battles. It'll show little clips like, okay, great. But now that you're actually seeing like this world realized, this is like very cool. Now you see a lot of like variety in the environments. You see like traveling around with a chocobo. You see just like you have a little hideout, Sid's hideout. They confirm the Sid in this game. It's like, yay, that's awesome. That's cool. I appreciate that the little touches are like giving Clive and some NPC like some like classic FF sprites to kind of give some flavoring in the UI, and like seeing the lore master do the level up pose, when you when you level up the lore and unlock more lore. It's like that's funny, and that's kind of neat. Kind of paying legacy. Seeing like where FF used to be and where it is now. And just like those little kind of touches to the things, and like see the relationship chart, kind of like the animation transition of like the semicircular like unveiling of like this relationship chart. In that, like those like little things, like small attention to detail, like it really works a lot for me. It goes a long way because like they're not like the gameplay, the combat looks flashy and cool and great, but what really like speaks to me, like beyond that, is like how well they paid attention to like the other parts of the presentation in this game, and that sort of stuff is like speaks to me on like a kind of like a deeper level.
I kind of actually really enjoy, because they spend a section of the state of play talking about all the different features that are available at like your hideout based Sid's hideout, and some of them are very like, you have a blacksmith, you have a shop, you have a quest counter, so like, and you actually have a hunt counter, a mark counter, which is very reminiscent of Final Fantasy 12, which I think is very cool, even including like a wanted poster and like artwork of the monster you're fighting, and like each of them is ranked and what you get for them, etc. I always think that's really neat. But they have the 2 areas. I forget the name of the characters. One's like a lore keeper, and one's like a strategist named Vivian, I believe. And it's kind of like an in-game lore book and codex, instead of like Final Fantasy 13 style. And I know Final Fantasy 15 had something similar, I don't quite remember, but it feels like divorced from the game, where it's like, yeah, if you go into your menu, you can read, the history of these places or these characters or what the current state of the world is. Where here it feels a little bit more diegetic, where just like, yeah, like this character is keeping you provide information to this character.
There's actually like librarians at your base. It makes sense.
And like I forget the name of the male character, the lore keeper.
Alcrides are like something like that.
So you provide information to him based on, I presume, what story point you're on, what quest you've taken. Like, all right, so here's what we know of this region, this character, this environment, this city. And then Vivian will be like, here's the state of the world politically, in terms of like, who are our allies, what's the state of our nations, things like that. And the fact that it's built into like the game's narrative in that way, I think it's a way of being able to provide that information to the player in a way that's not just, oh, it's buried in a menu somewhere. If you can't follow the story, you should have just pressed start more often. Like, no, it's there.
Loresman Harpocrates is his name.
All right, so yeah, that's the UI there that had like the sprite based UI about providing information to him, which is always kind of fun.
But they also show up like in the overall world like map. I forgot if it was like part of like the Vivian's did, like where it actually like shows off like the parts of the world map of like where you've been, and then like when you go over when you go over to that part of the world map, it not only shows like sort of like the sprites of like the characters or like a sprite involved, but like it kind of has like the tactical like war table feeling of like you see like the kind of like the Tetris block formations in that of like here's the current state of affair and things here, like here's like where certain garrisons and troops are positioned, almost like a tactical war table. I'm like, that's a really cool presentation that adds to it.
I'm looking at some of my other notes here. I wrote a couple notes like during this, like the narration during the state of play trailer. I kind of thought that they spent a lot of time and effort really driving home that this is a mainline Final Fantasy game that is an action RPG, which is of course obvious, but it has been something that has been a key point in a lot of discussions. We've seen it in our social media responses. We've seen it in the comment pages of our website about how this is or is not a quote unquote true Final Fantasy game because it isn't turn-based or action-based or whatever. People feel very passionately, not everyone, but several people feel very passionately about this. And I just kind of thought that some of the phrasing I saw here, as they said that this is the first true action RPG for a mainline Final Fantasy game, which I thought,
shove FF15 under the bus. Dang.
Which I'm like, wasn't Final Fantasy 15? That wasn't turn-based.
Well, actually, I can understand where they're coming from here, because 15 had the wait mode.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. I mean, yeah, but I think a lot of people still played it like, the active mode in that game.
And then, of course, there are plenty of side games, or even 7 Remake, that are action RPGs, though, again, also have a wait mode. I thought they talked very specifically about how, like, you control only Clive. He has allies that will assist him, but the player only needs to worry about Clive. Don't worry, the other allies will react to your commands or your inputs. They talked about how there are these timely accessories. They spent more time on this than I would have expected them to, about if for those that want an easier time, there's that story mode versus action mode. Like that's the toggle apparently upon selecting your game at the very start. And then in addition to that, there's like these accessories that will auto evade or automate things like that.
I guess to make sure that, like, to clarify that, like, it doesn't change the game substantially. Like, if it's like a story mode versus action mode, like story focus mode just says, hey, at the beginning of the game, we'll give you accessories that like make combat like easier, for like in terms of like the auto dodge accessory, or like the accessory that makes it so it visualizes like when you like can time a dodge, essentially. But it's not like something like FF7 Remake or FF15 with their wait modes and the pause modes. It doesn't change that it's still an action RPG. And I can understand why they spent so much time during doing this, is because I think they're worried like people will get turned off that like things are always moving in this game. There's like no wait mode, none of that. So there's no option to kind of like pause the action. But they want to emphasize like, hey, there are things you can equip to help you, get used to it, in terms of like, if you need that extra assistance of, if you're not good at timing dodges, we'll give you an accessory to help out with that. If you just want something that like gives you like a better visualization of like when to dodge things, we'll give you that as well. I think they just want to try to drive home the point that like, no matter what your skill level is, like, we think you should still give this game a shot, even if you might not be good at action games. Because unlike those other previous other Final Fantasy offerings, they actually had a dedicated mode for people who couldn't, like, weren't really up to snuff, or didn't really appeal to them with the active nature of the that those games could take. This one is like, it's front and center. This you have to engage in real time. While those other ones, they always gave you a way out if you wanted them.
And I think that's understandable, and I kind of agree with that. They're both saying like, hey, if you're a veteran of action games, we have a lot of that talent on staff, and hopefully you'll find something really engaging here. If you're not, we've made these kind of these ramps for you that you will be able to enjoy this potentially as your first action game, potentially as your gateway action RPG. So I really do think that it does make sense that they put some emphasis on that in this state of play as kind of the very. I know we had that PAX 1 hour extended look not too long ago, but that was, like you said, a lot more telling than showing. Where here they could show it with that information being contextualized by the gameplay shown on screen.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, like, other than that, is like a lot of like recap of information, right? It's like getting, like, for people who weren't following the marketing of FF16 up to this point, a lot of it was just like, just getting those people up to, if you've never seen FF16. Now, or so since that initial like trailer from that state of play, like in 2020, like, here's what it looks like now. Here's just kind of front and center gameplay. Then there's a little bit of the story. Here's a little bit of cinematics. Here's a little bit of the setup, but mostly focused on gameplay, which is, that's what we needed. That's what we got. We got to look at the options menu as well in it. Showing that they will have like have 2 they'll have it would sound like graphics mode. But they've already said that they'll have a performance mode as well. So I kind of wish we got more footage of this game in 60 FPS, because I'm really interested in that. But I'll play it either way. Like, I'm gonna take days off of work. I'm gonna fucking just tune out of the internet and just play this fucking game like how I did with Elden Ring and Breath of the Wild. Just separate myself from the world and just like play through this game.
I did write a note here, and I forget if this was detailed previously, and I wasn't aware, but I obviously knew that Clive, the main character, you play as portions of his journey in his teens, in his 20s, and in his 30s. I think I already knew that, but I didn't realize that the game starts in his 20s, and then all the footage about what happens with his brother as when Clive's a teenager is all told as like a complete flashback. Like maybe that was not new information, but I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that it was kind of told in media res like that. So that's kind of neat.
I didn't know either. I think they're getting to the point where like I kind of just don't want to know more about the game. Like I feel like that fine. This is like okay, right? Like this will like is kind of getting like getting everyone up to like speed of like what this game looks like in action and like what
How
this
you actually play it. Yeah.
how you actually play it. Like, but like at the very end of it, like Yoshi was like, if you want us to know more about like, the end game content of like this and that, I'm like I don't know. I kind of just don't want to know more about this game. But out of like, but other people are gonna see it. They're gonna want to talk about it. So I still kind of like why I'm probably gonna keep up with it, just like to talk about it here and then talk about it with friends who will want to watch that. But like personally, I'm just like I just kind of don't want to see. Like I'm already gonna play this fucking video game. Like I understand like why they're putting so much marketing to it because like. I think on some fundamental level, I think they also acknowledge that like the Final Fantasy like mainline brand has like kind of lost a bit of goodwill along the way for not playing FF14, right? If you're still kind of feeling burned like how the FF13 trilogy went or like how FF15 went, like I think on some level like they know that the mainline people who are like to only follow the mainline single player experiences, like they've kind of lost that goodwill.
They know they got to get people back on board.
And that's why they're kind of going full force with like that's why they're going so hard on this marketing. So I understand it from that perspective as well.
Yeah, he said at the very end, Yoshida, that there will be other information coming up in the near future specifying like end game. So the marketing cycle's not done quite yet. But obviously we're kind of getting into if this was their big kind of reveal in terms of here's what the game is and how it'll play. Sounds like there'll be a little bit more coming up in terms of some very specific features, which I'm sure a lot of people who are super eager for this game will be excited about, or others who are already on board will be like, I don't need to see that.
Yeah.
And of course, like I opened up with, the other footage that we got for a major summer release is that there'll be a little bit less to chew on here because it was just a single 3-minute trailer and not a gameplay preview. We got the final trailer for Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. So the last time we talked about this game, it was primarily gameplay focused. We talked about the fuse system. We talked about some of the mechanics with the Ultra Hand and the Sky system and things like that with Tears of the Kingdom. And now this third trailer, final trailer, whatever you want to call it, is very much focused on narrative, on story. So a lot of things that had already kind of been presumed way back from the initial teaser about, this isn't a spoiler because it's everywhere on the marketing, the return of Ganondorf, things like that. I did not go frame by frame here. I know certain people who are super eager likely could to see all the things that have been introduced here. They show like automatons that are being controlled. They show a lot of the combat with the new abilities that Link has, some story elements in terms of Link's position in relationship to Zelda as her knight, some more characters. There's like a new Rito character. There's a new character that is presumably, I don't know if this has been confirmed or just still heavily rumored, like the Zonai civilization that is heavily teased in Breath of the Wild, seems to be a major player in Tears of the Kingdom. And then, of course, Ganondorf himself and his aspirations and being a big bad and all that stuff. I don't know. It's a good trailer. Makes me excited for the game in terms of the other ones kind of being very story light. We talked about the last showing of this game being more of about quote unquote adding verbs to the gameplay and less about the premise or the narrative. So here I think kind of balances out. This is kind of a good thing I think to end on before the release of the game next month.
I mean it was a beautiful, it's like they had the final pre-launch trailer and just it did everything that it needed to do, Like there's very much like to me there's like a perfectly crafted trailer of like it shows you the premise, it shows you how the state of like the world has evolved. It's like there's a lot more civilization now that it's all more unified. You see Link like that, you see a lot of interaction with just like characters all over the world. You see like you even have partners in battle now with Link. You see you see a lot of things in motion that like it's just like it's incomprehensible on to some level, especially with the scope of some of these battles. Like, oh, okay, I guess my Switch will run this. I guess, but
I
hell of
hope.
my water. But it was just the main theme song in this show is just fucking beautiful. Like the saxophone in it is just like just gorgeous. Just I loved it. I loved this trailer. I loved everything that was going on. Ganondorf's new design is fucking amazing. He's hot as hell. It's
I thought he
great.
was Akuma for a second. I'm like,
yeah, you're not wrong. But
So I'm going to ask a question that might have an obvious answer, but me, who has only been fringe paying attention, don't quite get. So we've seen a fair bit of footage of this game over the last month, and you either see Link in kind of like his hair down, quote unquote, toga attire, and then in this trailer you see a lot of Link in more of his traditional hair back armored attire. And I don't know if that's been explained, or if it's supposed to say that's two different time periods, or if that's just literally customization of the character.
I have no idea. I feel like there's something that they're not. There's more to this that they're letting on. I feel like I feel like there's either going to be like a significant event that happens at the beginning of the game, and then it's like, okay, how did it get to this point? Or there's maybe some sort of time skip that happens. I don't know, honestly. I feel like there's like definitely a twist in this game that like they're just kind of being coy about and not showing, and I appreciate that. I feel like they're showing just enough to like get people's like imaginations go run wild, but like I feel like unlike the FF16 where I feel like they're kind of teetering too much and they're teasing more to show, but it's like I kind of get why they're doing that. Like, but personally, like when it comes to effective, like trailers that get me excited, it's trailers like these where like they preemptively showed something that's like more gameplay focused and showed that like, hey, here's what's different, and showed some of like the newer tools that makes and it was very brief, which is like 10 minutes or 10 to 15 minutes or whatever of just like gameplay that just shows like what's new in it and like very brief explanations. And this one is actually just shows like here's the premise. We're kind of teasing a little bit, maybe a little bit too much of like some of the more bigger scale encounters. But it's like just enough. It's like that it's like, okay, I'm fucking on board. I'm very excited. And you couple that with like the fucking incredible main theme. Like I don't think this trailer comes together at all until you like put the music on top of that. If the music wasn't as good as it was in that trailer, none of this would have worked for me. But like I listened to I watched this trailer one day and I was like, that was great, that was amazing. Then I listened to this trailer just audio only, like without any of the visuals, and like I teared up.
Well, that's kind of in line with the very popular and almost famous Breath of the Wild trailer. So it's like, I wonder if this music will appear in the game anywhere or no, if it's true.
Yeah, pretty much right. Yeah, that's the thing. Like who knows? Because yeah, it's just they're deceptive about that. But
all right, I have to ask, do we think, I see some people still holding out hope, do we think Zelda is playable in this game?
No. In fact,
No.
I'd say that after this trailer, there's a higher chance that Ganon's playable.
Oh, really?
Dude, I would love for Ganon to play.
Well, here's something that people have pointed out. Here's something that people have pointed out. So, well, a couple of things. One, if you remember, they mentioned that there was a reason why they did the remaster of Skyward Sword. They said because it was, well, obviously it was going to be relevant to Tears of the Kingdom. Do you remember, I guess Skyward Sword spoiler, what the kind of like plot thing at the very end was? That Zelda was a reincarnation of Hylia, but very specifically, she was her own character.
Yeah.
And how it implies that Ganon is a reincarnation of Demise. Well, wouldn't that also imply that Ganon is his own character? And then the end of Breath of the Wild, like one of the things is that, like Calamity Ganon, aka Demise, has given up on reincarnation. So if Ganon's here, is he really the villain this time? And if you remember, there's like this one mural thing in Breath of the Wild that showcases the ancient hero. That doesn't look like Link. That looks like Ganon's new design.
This is very out there, but I'm enjoying it. Like, if this is at all right, I'm gonna be like, damn.
Can you imagine if can you imagine like the last like 10 hours of the game is like you're playing Ganon and you have to defeat Link, and that's it. Link is the final boss.
I think that, and just having fun here, because like regardless of what happens, I'm excited for this. It's going to be a major. Well, I mean, Breath of the Wild is one of the best games of all time.
I fucking love Breath of the Wild.
That's not a controversial statement. And this is looking like it's going to like. It damn, to be fair, it damn well should look like a massive improvement, considering the fact that this is the longest wait we've had between 3D Zelda games.
As long as my Switch was like light on fire running it, I think it'll be okay.
Yeah, like just in the spirit of fun and like just the theory crafting, I think one of the things they might go for with this is that, okay, the 3 Triforce holders have to work together to finally end the cycle with Demise. So that would be Link, Zelda, and Ganon.
Part of me is like, I think this is boring, but I think the safest answer is that you play through Link the whole time and Ganondorf's a bad guy and nothing surprising happens. But if Nintendo gets bold and decides to shake it up, I hope they do something along the lines of what James is saying here. Just to kind of keep us on our toes and try something different. I hope they do something like that.
Yeah, but man, what an incredible trailer. And that was just short, succinct, to the point. 3 thumbs up for me.
Yeah. I don't want to I want to be careful, not like overstate it, but like this game comes out next month, and this trailer was the one that first made me go like, damn, this game comes out next month. So I don't know, like, excitement finally feels real. It doesn't finally feel like this far away thing that we're waiting on.
I like that, the big marketing things for both Zelda and FF16, like now that they're finally just like really hitting in their stride, like it's way closer to the release dates, instead of like, oh, we still wait like 4 months for this game, so this is good. It's so weird that it's so close, but
we have 3 more podcasts, not counting this one. We have 3 more podcasts, and then we can talk about Zelda.
And the nice thing is like the buffer thing is like we have Jedi Survivor across the just around the corner, so that'll help. Not to say that Jedi Survivor is kind of like the filler game till Zelda and FF16. It's just like it's something to focus on, and then once that's done, your Zelda's right there. So, and there's other incredible releases along the way too. These are the heavy hitters now that they're finally. After years of waiting, it's just like now that you're getting to the spirit of things again, I'm like thinking, should I give Breath of the Wild replay? But like I still remember Breath of the Wild pretty vividly. I did a replay like a year and a half ago, and I still really enjoyed that. Maybe not.
Man, isn't it crazy just how like big 2023 is turning out to be for games?
Like it's one of those things that's like there's some like kind of like slower spots in 2023. Like I kind of wish I had like something like to fill in those spots, but in general, like the 2023 is like is really kind of like it's kind of the year of like where long ass games that we've been waiting for forever like are finally getting released, and like they're real things we can actually play. It's like it's like in a weird shell shocked moment. It's like, oh wow, I can actually play the sequel to the. Can you remember how long we had to refer to Tears of the King, the sequel to Breath of the Wild?
Quote unquote Breath of the Wild 2. We didn't have a name for the longest time.
So I love that. Like we've known more about the Tears of the Kingdom as the sequel to Breath of the Wild than we have as the official name Tears of the Kingdom. Think about that.
Every so often it's only been recently I've been able to just like keep calling it Tears of the Kingdom. Like for the longest time I just instinctively just kept calling it Breath of the Wild 2.
Most people still call it Breath of the Wild 2. I think, or the new Breath of the Wild. I think most people still call it that.
Yeah,
it's really good.
And those, like, we keep putting Breath of the Wild 2 or Tears of the Kingdom and Final Fantasy 16 in kind of the same bucket, only because their marketing cycles are kind of aligned right now. But yeah, so that's 2 weeks in a row where we've got new footage and new details for those 2 games as kind of our our major heavy hitters of the week for news fronts. We have a couple other things here and a few more release dates, so only a few more headlines left to go for this week. We did get some more details about another May release. This is Fuga Melodies of Steel 2. Reading through this, we got some new press release that is focusing on the affinity system between children on the tank and the intermission portions of the game, upgrading the facilities of the tank, and then the game's notebook and hero mode. Now, when I read through this, as someone who hasn't played the first game, my initial thought is, isn't this in the first game? Like, this isn't new, is my understanding, but am I missing something that's in the details of this press release that is new to the sequel? Or is this just kind of detailing how the gameplay structure of the series works?
Hero mode was in the first game. I don't think that's like that there's anything really new. It's just like kind of laying out. They just introduced a new character that looks. I didn't know how to describe this new character, the Count Noveloon. But
Yeah.
but
Yeah, reading actually reading news posts, because I'll be honest, I've been mostly kind of ignoring all the news for Fuga 2 because I know I'm gonna play it. Yeah, the notebook and hero mode stuff is not new. It's
and this intermission stuff during the intermission phase, you can interact with other children and increase your affinity. That's not new.
Those aren't new. The workshop and scrap fishing was in the first one also, so it's kind of like just kind of describing, hey, there's China, the events of chapter 2. It's like, I don't need to know like your story, what happens in chapter 2 of your new game. I can play that for myself. It's okay. I understand why they do it, but that's why I don't like with James. I don't really follow it too closely because it's just like, I'm gonna play this.
And I'm not trying to be like dismissive, but it just does really seem like Fuga 2 is more of the same, which based on the short turnaround time, like that's understandable and expected. And it sounds like based on Fuga 1, that's kind of what people want. They're just like, oh, okay, so put the same mechanics in kind of a continuation of the same narrative, and a lot of it will look familiar but potentially tweaked. So a lot of the stuff kind of should seem familiar to those that have played the first game. Okay, I just wanted to make sred that I wanted to, if something in this press release for this detailed dump for Fuga Melodies of Steel 2 was indeed new, I wanted to make sure I highlighted it, but it looks like this is kind of a lot of stuff that has been present in the series in the initial game in some fashion.
Yeah.
And kind of on a similar note, for another summer release, we're seeing NIS America, now that they've released the English official versions of Trails from Zero and Trails to Azure. Of course, the next major project for them in terms of that series is the official Western release of Hajimari no Kiseki, or Trails into Reverie, which is coming out in July. NIS America has released a features trailer for that game. I watched this trailer, and it's a lot of stuff. Not entirely, but it's a lot of stuff that has been present in the Cold Steel games. They show some Vantage Masters. They show some of the mech battles. They do show a few of like Elisa Magical Girl minigame mode and a few other minigames that take place like on the beach and things like that in this game. But it's a lot of stuff where I look at this features trailer for Trails into Reverie, and it just looks like someone who hasn't played Hajimari. It looks like Cold Steel 5 to me, which is kind of like fine because kind of what I expected. But this features trailer here for Trails into Reverie doesn't really show anything too surprising to me. I guess the Magical Girl Lisa thing might be a fun diversion, but I expect that to be a very, very small part of the game. Just a quick little diversion that you might spend a few minutes in. But
I mean, yeah, it's just packed to there's a lot of like optional content in that game. It's just like it's just a heavily condensed packed game, like with all sorts of shit you can do. That's the best way to put it, pretty much. It's like, in terms of like, when going from Trails into Reverie to like Kuro 1, like you can really feel like, a lot of like that optional content missing because they're still getting like, Kuro 1 is basically they had to they were building a new graphical engine from like the ground up, so like they kind of had to like cut out like a lot of like features that like you saw like in like previous games in terms of like optional content.
There's no fishing. Like they didn't get fishing finished until like Kuro 2. Like you can like people even like looked at the data in the PS4 and PC versions of Kuro 1. It's like, yeah, no, that was a last minute feature that was cut. It was very clearly something that was supposed to be in there until it just wasn't.
Yeah.
RPG without fishing. How could you?
I do like the panda who wants to be a millionaire in this in this trailer. Nice pun. Good job, Miss.
Well,
I guess.
Well, the
I-
sad news is I'm not going to do a Trails into Reverie guide. I figure it takes me about 3 months to rewrite an Azure guide. There's no way in hell I could get a
What if
Reverie guide done.
It's over.
what if Neoseeker offers you like
$10,000.
Do I want to suffer for this?
He's like, I'll think about it.
He has to think about it. He's like, oh, I don't know, man. I don't blame you. I wouldn't want to fucking write a fucking guide for
like
Reverie.
Reverie is just got so much shit in it. It's like I do not blame you. You're probably gonna do it for Kuro though. I can already tell.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna do Crow.
Oh yeah, that's easy for you, dude. Kuro,
but
like,
when I was like thinking about it, it's like, wait, it's like master chords. There's like 50 of them or some shit now, and then they have like 15 levels. I had to list like all 15 level stats versus like in Azure, you just list 3 levels.
Well, here's the worst part about Reverie. You're gonna need a PSVR to finish that guide.
I don't own one.
Well, you better start. You have to get the PSVR. You have to get PSVR 1 also. Don't get VR 2, or else that won't be compatible.
Wait, I threw away my PS4. I got a PS5 now. So
No. You have to get an adapter for the PSVR 1.
Yeah.
Oh,
you have to get like a fucking nightmare setup with your PS4 to PSVR.
I like how Chow's like, I'm not doing a guide, and then we're just like, for your guide, you're gonna need a PSVR.
Are they actually gonna put the PSVR features in the English one? Like, are they actually like localizing all that
stuff? I'm pretty sure it is on. Well, the thing is that it's just like a different way of interacting with the beach stuff. So it's like the PS4 version just has it in there. I don't think they're going to update the PS5 version to be compatible, but so in a weird way, I guess technically the most feature complete version of the game that they're localizing is probably going to be the PS4 version.
Wait, with the PC version of Reverie, are they gonna like have the VR stuff for the PC version?
I don't believe so. No.
Okay, so it's only the PlayStation version.
Well, I think it's. I'm googling this around. It looks like it's the other way around. The PC version of Reverie will have VR, but the PS version won't. I'm trying to find I found a Silicon Arrow report on it. I'm trying to find a primary source for this.
Very important.
According to the Silicon Arrow post from November of last year, this will only be available for the PC version of the game. PlayStation players will not be able to play the game in VR.
Wait, so they're cutting out the PSVR stuff from the PlayStation version and only having that stuff for the PC.
Well, wait a second. If it's the PS4, like the PS4 version, absolutely should have it because it would be more work to make sure it doesn't work.
That sounds crazy if that's the case.
Let me 1 second. Let me check.
Yeah, I need because if that's the case, my mind's like exploding. Like, how does that make sense?
All right. I think I got it. 1 second.
It might be a confusion because like the PS5 version won't have it. So.
Oh, okay. Wow. I found it. I found it. NIS America blog from November of last year. VR support will be only available for the PS4 and PC versions of Trails into Reverie. So not PS5. Okay. So the Silicon Arrow report of that NIS America blog was not clear.
All right, you're so good, child. Just get the PC version and have a fucking VR headset that's compatible.
Use Google Cardboard or some shit. That works with Steam VR, right?
Yeah, spend like $1,000 to be a creep in a Falcon game for 2 minutes. Be a read.
I still kind of hate that. The whole reason I even played Reverie is I made like a throwaway like tweet saying, "Hey, I have a PSVR. If someone like lets me borrow their copy of Reverie, I will play it and then stream the VR stuff. I am not releasing that VOD."
I've seen that footage of what it has like. Man, that's I guess that's one way to sell VR headsets.
Let me just say this. The way you interact during the beach section is that there's like specific spots where if you look at for a period of time, it'll just automatically like respond. Of course, one of them is the character's breasts.
Wow, Kondo really knows his audience.
I mean that's beach scenes for you. It comes with the
Paying
territory.
for fan service. It's what you
Look,
sign up for.
Kondo was just inspired by one of the very first PSVR games, Summer Girlfriend or Summer whatever. And he was
I
like,
remember that. I remember that. That rings a bell.
Or he just saw like Kenichiro Takaki when he was experimenting with VR, and he just strapped a like pair of like silicone like breasts on the end of the VR headset.
And then Kondo was like, "This is cinema."
But yeah,
Definitely
that
better
comes
than
out.
Hideo Kojima.
Yeah, so Reverie's out in July, and it's I'm excited for it. I'm just more excited for Kuro. But like I'm excited for Reverie to kind of serve as that bridging title. And I guess I'll say that just people who have played the game have done more to sell me on it more than NIS America has, but I think it's kind of comes with the territory for this.
Reverie is good. Well, there's definitely aspects of Reverie that are painful. Ironically enough, I'd say that the one route in Reverie that most people I know of dislike is probably the Lloyd route. The other two routes are like both good. Like
I would say Reverie's
fantastic.
Reverie's a mechanically fun game when you do endgame stuff in it.
Oh yeah, like they've polished the like Cold Steel 3-4 combat system like perfectly. Like I feel like with the additions to Reverie, with what have they I know they changed the name of like Valiant Rage to something else. What was it? What's the localization for it?
I got already too. I still know it as Valiant Rage.
Yeah, I remember seeing it and I was like, yeah, that does make sense, and it probably United Front.
There you go.
Okay.
United Front. Yeah. So
you know,
it's like
I can't. I don't know. I am completely dreadful of playing this game. I have no motivation to play because I feel like it's like, am I playing Cold Steel 3 and 4 again? It looks the same.
No, it's better. It's better
paced. It's better paced. It's better paced, and it's like I'd say that there's aspects of the plot that, and I know like. I can only say this because pretty much everyone on this podcast is on the same page when it comes to Cold Steel 4. There's aspects of Hajimari, or I keep saying Hajimari, Reverie, where there's definitely some of that like headassery that really kind of grinded my gears about like Cold Steel 4's plot. But the majority of Reverie's plot is like unironically good. There's way more good than bad in Reverie, and I do think that if you go into it with an open mind, you will have a good time. It's a good game.
I am dropping guide writing to enjoy this game, because when I was playing Azure, I realized that I am not even reading any of the plot. I am fast forwarding through this entire game to get the guide done as possible.
I love that. I'm dropping guide writing to enjoy the game.
Granted. So, how many times have you played Azure?
At least 3 times, but surely.
So yeah, you were skipping because you've already played the game.
But surely, I can't have the same experience. Instead of dreading playing one scene hours and hours, it'll ruin my enjoyment. So dropping for this, I can finally.
But if you want to drop something to enjoy something more, always gotta go for the route to enjoy something more.
Yeah.
It's like I need to get my passion back for the Trails series after Cold Steel 4 killed it. So it's like I think this is it. I know Kuro already like reignited, but I don't want to touch Kuro without fully beating.
Yeah, you need to play Reverie before you play Kuro. Like if you're already invested with Trails, it is a requirement that you play through Reverie, because Kuro 1 in particular is basically a direct follow-up to what happens at the end of Reverie. Like unironically, like there's like these prologue VN segments that you unlock after you finish the post game that directly ties into Kuro's plot, and they're even called back to in aspects of Kuro itself. So if you're a Trails fan and you want to play Kuro, you need to play Reverie. I'm sorry.
Trails into Reverie, homework for Onokaseki.
Kondo just can't leave any baggage out, can he?
But I mean,
that's kind of baggage this time.
That's kind of like the series, like this. That's how the series is operated. Like, there's never really been a place where you can truly skip something, except I suppose Crossbell and Cold Steel 1 and 2. You can play in any order.
I tell people, play whatever game looks good to them. I don't tell them like start with this or play this. Like if you think a game looks cool, just start with that one. Who fucking cares?
Yeah. To be clear, when I'm giving this homework to Chow, it's because I understand that he's played every game in the series.
Yeah,
you can start with Kuro and have a great time. I'm just saying, if you're already invested, you're going to regret not having played Reverie heading into Kuro.
I'm more on the realm. I'm like, you want to start with Trails of the Sky the Third? Go for it. You know what? It's your life.
Hey, look, my first. Okay, it's the same boat with Gundam too. No one's gonna tell you watch all the original movies, watch Zeta Gundam, watch all this before you can watch Unicorn. Right? You can't tell people that. It's like, but you know what? My first Gundam series is Gundam F91. That's the first song I started with.
Yeah. Look, there's rarely ever like I tell people you fucked up when it comes to like starting with like any Gundam show. But if you like started with like Stardust Memory or like F91, no, I don't want to say you fucked up. I won't say you fucked up, but all right.
You know how it is.
That's the breaks.
You won't say it, but you'll think it.
I'm free to think whatever I want to.
Anyways, I still find it funny that technically we already have Kuro's localization announced by NIS America. Well, no, not by NIS America. We have it
by Falco. There's coming later.
Yeah, so it's like we know that NIS America is localizing Kuro. We know that they are publishing it on PC at the end of this year. And we know that a localization is coming later. It's funny that that's all official information. It's just out there now. And yet it's just weird, like the situation we find ourselves in with the series.
If you're into the fan patch has now fully translated everything. All the NPCs are completely translated if people want to deal with that sort of means.
At this point, I just wait. If you haven't played it already, I just wait for Durante's port because one, you're officially supporting the English localizations in a roundabout way, and two, that port's going to be way better than the Clouded Leopard one. Yeah. So it's like just wait. If you don't like, just wait.
The last handful of headlines on this podcast are mostly just release dates, and then one last thing at the end. Also coming out in this next week was something that I had remembered, I had forgotten about, but I remember it as soon as I read the headline, and that is Horizon Forbidden West is getting a DLC. Like, oh yeah, this was announced. Burning Shores is launching on April 19th, so that's within the next week at the time of recording. I think Adam is the only one that's finished Forbidden West here, so I don't know if you've got time squared away to do Burning Shores, or if you'll get to it eventually, or if you have any interest at all in this. The launch trailer for Burning Shores, it's pretty fun. It's got really good music and it reminds me how gorgeous this game is, to its credit. I'm excited to play this once it releases on PC, I suppose, is where I'm sitting at.
Same. I like, it's been so long since Forbidden West came out, and it's like they said, oh yeah, about every 2 years they'll come out on PC, and I'm thinking, look, I know The Last of Us Part 1's PC version is a garbage fire, but Decima Engine has a good track record on PC. I will just wait for the PC version of Forbidden West.
I guess it depends who's doing the porting job, because you say like it's
if it's
uneven. Usually PlayStation game ports are good, like Spider-Man and Returnal.
Because it's like I even kind of talked about it on Twitter the other day, where it's like, yeah, like there's a lot of good PlayStation PC ports, but if you actually look at the proper track record of the state of those games at launch, more of them had issues than not. Even Returnal, if you wanted to use the fancy ray tracing features, no matter what, you had terrible frame pacing. You had stuff.
I'll put it like this: they seemed way more playable than Last of Us.
Yeah. Well, I think the most wild thing about The Last of Us port is that based off of what people have seen from the way that game handles like VRAM and system RAM, it seems like the way they ported it was they just duplicate whatever's in the system RAM and the VRAM so that they're both on the same page, in a way to kind of try and emulate what the PS5 memory setup is like.
That sounds like garbage.
Yeah.
With my limited knowledge of how those things work, that sounds like garbage.
Yeah.
I remember when Forbidden West came out, we only had a few people that looked at it, and it was kind of something that didn't get a lot of look in the end of the year stuff. But this trailer, I don't know, it's really got stellar visuals, great music. It's got a fun ending shot that's pretty climactic. So I think basically by the time this does hit PC, regardless of the issues that were plaguing the original Horizon launch on PC, like I think at that point I'll be in the mood for, yeah, I'm in the mood for Horizon Forbidden West at that point if it comes out, let's say next summer or something like that.
I feel bad for Guerrilla here because it's like it's yet another like Horizon release that's going to be overshadowed by something because it's like this comes out like a week before Star Wars.
I was thinking, I was about to say, I was like, at least they're not like buying like a big like launch of like a game, and like because I'm thinking of Zelda, but then you mentioned Star Wars, I'm like, oh yeah, fuck. Well, I don't know. I don't know. This one's a doubly weird because this expansion is only for PS5, the PS5 version. So if you got Forbidden West on PS4, tough shit, I guess. On the plus side, I hope like I'm really interested to see like if this expansion, like how this expansion will really. Hopefully, it makes it very clear like why this was PS5 only.
They said a lot of things about how they have special PS5 cloud tech, which this expansion is going to be making use of, whatever that means.
Power of the cloud.
That's a blast from
I
the
like
past.
that. Hey, fuck you, Chow. That was good.
All right, a few more release dates for the next couple months. We have a release date for the Western localized version of Dungeon Crawler Labyrinth of Zangetsu. It'll be coming out on April 19th. April 20th.
I was just going to say really quick, I find it very interesting that P-Cube is calling this a dungeon crawler RPG, where very specifically they did not actually call it an RPG with its Western release. And I remembered seeing like impressions of it back then where people were like, yeah, this does not feel like it has enough depth to it. So I don't know. Interested to see what the reception is for this when it comes out later. Well, I guess next week.
At first glance, I thought I was like, is this another experience RPG? Like, I was like, I was like, oh no, it's not. There's something totally different. But it's kind of
no. Like experience after like, especially after Undernauts, I feel like they're on another level. They have a certain pedigree to them when it comes to dungeon crawlers. I feel like I'm talking out of my ass here.
So I accidentally misspoke. Labyrinth of Zangetsu is April 20th. Burning Shores is April 19th. So both in the next week. Obviously, Labyrinth of Zangetsu released last year in Japan in September. So it'll be next week for us in the West.
You know what's also on April 20th?
What's that?
Street Fighter 6 Showcase. Let's fucking go, Chow!
What if they delayed Horizon's DLC by a day and called it Blazing Shores instead?
That'd be lit. We got a release date for Fairytale RPG Ravenlok. It'll be coming out in May on May 4th for Xbox and PC. This is going to be one that'll be I guess it's only on Epic Game Store, or is it also on Steam? I think it's only on Epic Game Store.
Only, yeah. Mm-hmm. It does look, I remembered seeing this trailer and it's like I completely forgot about this game, but now like looking at like the screenshots again, it's like, oh yeah, this does look interesting. Too bad it's coming out in the at the beginning of May. I will not have time for it at launch.
Yeah, sorry.
It's kind of got like that Alice in Wonderland sort of fantastical vibe to it. And then we also learned that this fall, Monochrome Mobius, Rights and Wrongs Forgotten, will finally release for console. It will release for PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. This originally released last year, PC only, in November. And I remember back when it released and James covered it, we kind of talked a little bit about why that was, why it was disappointing for fans in the series. So it is good news to see that it will finally come to PlayStation this fall.
Yeah, I will eat crow. I genuinely did not think that NIS America would bother with it if it wasn't going to be a day and date release with the PC version. So
yeah, the fact that they're doing weird one. That they flipped this around. Not like it used to be the PC version before the PlayStation. Now it's like the other way around.
I wonder if this means, because I remember back when they localized Prelude to the Fallen, the whole reason they did Zan was because by their NIS PR's own admission, it was basically like, hey, we'll throw in this for free if you want to like do this as well. And that one's localization was handled by the developers themselves using like Mask of Deception like localization files. So it's like interesting. I wonder if this means we might actually get a late localization of Zan 2 if it's a similar situation. I don't
Zan's
know.
also only on PC?
No, Zan isn't on PC. It's Japan only. It came out in 2021. It was an adaptation of Mask of Truth, but as a kind of like Muso style thing.
Yeah,
I
it's ringing a
never
bell.
wrote about it, but I did import and play it, and I think it's a lot better than Zan 1. So it would be a shame if we just never got it over here in the West. So
I forgot. Do they share basically the same script between the PC and English versions, or are they different?
So the way it works for the PC versions of the trilogy, which to be fair, even though like NIS America is releasing Monochrome Mobius, I would recommend anyone that is getting into this franchise to just get into it on PC. All of them are Steam Deck verified. All of them run perfectly fine on Steam Deck. And I believe Mask of Deception, Mask of Truth are only available on PC at the moment because like Atlas had the rights for it, and then they let them expire for PS4 and Vita. The scripts are mostly the same for Mask of Deception, Mask of Truth. There's some slight like grammatical changes that Shirabun made. Like they did an extra editing pass, but by their own admission, the scripts were already good enough as it was that they didn't make many changes. Prelude to the Fallen's PC version is the way to go because there's some weird localization quirks and some stiff writing and Prelude on PS4 and Vita that it's still an all right localization. It's not bad. It's just there's definitely moments where it's like things like stick out. And I do know Shirabun did a much more lengthy editing period for their PC release of Prelude.
So but the downside of this release because on PlayStation, like it'd still be running at 30 FPS. I don't think it like the console version of Monochrome Mobius ever got to 60 FPS. Like, PC version did, right?
Yeah, it's like again, like there have been a lot of, and I do want to revisit Monochrome Mobius and maybe write about it because like I remember shortly after I put my review out, they released a patch that fixed up like some quality of life features.
Did they ever give the NPC models like real models?
They gave them faces.
Oh, right. That's the other thing.
I remember that scared the crap out of me when you showed a picture of it. It's like, oh man,
Yeah.
faceless NPCs all around town.
Yeah. It's my main issues with Monochrome Mobius weren't. It's not that it's a bad game. It's just that the pacing isn't great, and specifically the menuing for like battles is a nightmare. Because by the end of the game, you'll have like 30 something like skills per character, and it's like it's just a list. It's like a list that you have to scroll through, and it's like most of the time you're just going to be wanting to use the strongest ability because that's the newest one, and like the scaling for like MP, it's like it just makes sense, but that's at the end of the list, so you're basically like tapping like the D-pad like 7 or 8 times to get to it, even though it's like rows of 3, and it was just like that's the thing that got me.
Never mind. Action RPGs are the future. They were right. Fuck turn-based.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like, let's see. My friends complain about this game too. But they weren't complaining about that. They just complain like there's all this exciting thing that happens in the prologue, and then it's nothing but
that's the other thing.
But side quests.
Yeah, it's like the first 6 or 7. Well, I guess the first 10 hours of Monochrome Mobius' story is really good. The pacing's great. It has this really fresh and exciting new areas that you just don't see in the rest of the series, and then you never return to that area. You're gone. It's just it feels very much like, what's the best way of putting it? It feels like it's a different game entirely, and there's aspects of it in the like the middle section of the game that are fine. Like the side quests are all right. The explorable world is pretty interesting. But the pacing's just bad and nothing happens until the very end. And then it ends on a cliffhanger and it's like, okay, this game bombed. Are we going to get a follow-up? Is the sequel going to be improved? I don't know. Nobody knows. So I hope the fact that the console version is being localized means that they do want to do a follow-up. And I think a follow-up will be much improved. But yeah. Yeah, we'll see.
And then the final note, very similar to last week's final note here, is the end of a global version of a free-to-play RPG. Disgaea RPG, its global service will end on May 12th.
Bolt Red Games Bros. It's over. It's so fucking over. Disgaea RPG was the mobile game that was like a turn-based RPG. It wasn't like a strategy RPG like other Disgaea games. It was like a standard turn-based. A shitload of gacha, obviously, a shitload of like absurd stats like Disgaea, and a lot of like collaborations with like other NIS IPs. It's just like I never really got into it. It was like kind of like whatever, and that it does never really look that interesting to me. The only thing that, like was no the thing that makes it worthy of note was one. It actually got an official release on Steam as well. Like there was a PC version of this game, so there's occasionally like some mobile games that get released on Steam. Here and there. Like one of the more interesting ones was like Heaven Burns Red, which is like a Japanese only mobile game, but it is available on Steam to download. But this one was like funny because it's like one of the last projects that was by Bolt Red Games. I don't know what else Bolt Red Games has besides this at this point, because if this goes down, I assume that whole company is like on the brink of shutting down, if not shutting down, because they were like the ones who also brought over Arctalad R, which was a mobile game that was like it got announced for end of service in Japan before like coming out like in the West or like in the middle of it. It was like a really funny situation. I remember I was like, that's kind of fucking awkward. They were responsible also for bringing over that Fantasy Star Idola Saga or whatever mobile game that they also shut down. There's also like a few others that escaped my mind. But they're pretty much infamous now for just like that, for like having a string of games bringing over and then just like shortly end of service right after. They just like the management of like their projects seems to be a mess. It just seems like not a great situation all around for them over at that side. Hopefully, the nice people that that work there, like find somewhere better to land their feet on, I guess. Yeah. What else can I say? Just this whole Bolt Red initiative just seems to have like fucking just sunk.
There's a question for you, Josh. Did any of these games have a Persona 5 collab? Because if there's a Persona 5 collab, your game usually ends dead.
I mean, the Grand Blue Fantasy should be out of service then, right?
Well, that's what we hoped. But
I was hoping it's like fucking crossing fingers, right? Like fucking get end of service for Grand Blue already. So I mean, the Persona thing is stupid, all around.
It's just like bad timing. It's like every time they like introduce it, then the next year the gacha game's dead. So that's why it has.
I mean, yeah, like another Eden who has like permanent fucking collabs. So they had 2 Persona 5 collabs and they're still going strong with their 6th anniversary, in Japan, and and so if the trend is supposed to hold true, then Grand Blue should announce end of service hopefully soon, right? And then you'll be a happier person. You'll become a much better person. You'll have way more free time to do that Reverie guide that Grand Blue has been taking up, So
I'd rather play Grand Blue than do the Reverie guide.
Well, you won't have any choice if they announce end of service. That should be the death pact you make to yourself. It's like if Grand Blue goes out of service, I have to do that Reverie guide.
No.
No.
I told him it takes me this long to do an Azure rewrite. It's like there's no way I could get a Reverie gun done in time when everyone wants a guide day one these days. It's just impossible to keep up that pace. It's like I don't know, like these days when I write guides, I want like every damn detail in it. I want this guide to be the only source of information.
You hold yourself to a high standard.
I know. I respect that, Chow. You're not out there for trying to fucking do stupid SEO BS of like 300 words before you get to the answer you want. You want a fucking like you want like you want the guides that they used to fucking sell on bookshelves. I
That's so
understand.
hilarious. People
They-
even plagiarize my
I was gonna say they
strategy on-
still sell them on bookshelves.
They just steal like actual guides and then
Yeah,
put
they
them
still
on
actually,
on
yeah,
Amazon.
they put it on bookshelves. Yeah.
Like I also find it like funny, hilarious enough. Even on like the Steam forums, people plagiarize my own strategy on how to kill last boss in Azure.
That's awesome.
And it's like
That's awful,
like-
but also
they-
awesome. I guess.
it's like they even like it's like, oh, here's my tips. I'll go, hey, this is the exact strategy I wrote, and even had the bug that I listed from the beta version. It's like this doesn't. It's like, why do you mention about that? It's like that by mentioning that the bug about the beta version, then I already know that's my guide. That's from my guide, you know. It's like man, some people.
They got to get their Steam kudos, you know. If they don't get the recognition there, then we're also going to get it.
Well, you could sell ebooks. I mean, that's what people are doing, stealing our guides and selling as ebooks on Amazon and what is that, Barnes and Noble?
Okay. Will you let me resell your guides? Since I'm a friend, do I get the discount? I was like, you know,
It's
it's
like
okay.
only if you rewrite it.
All right. Well, that's it. You know, that's all about that. That's kind of news. There's nothing else to really say about it.
Yeah, couldn't have been tidy and just looped into everything else that ended last week, but seems to be the theme of the season at least.
A funerals for gacha games.
The funerals for E3 and gotcha games. But yeah, that covers a very light news slate for this week. So again, just more footage and discussion on the bigger releases of the month, as well as some smaller releases coming out later in April and into May and June and July. So next week, it gets a little bit more interesting. We've got some Final Fantasy Pixel remasters finally arriving on consoles. Maybe we'll have some more time to take a look at Wartales or Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection. We, of course, got Labyrinth of Zangetsu. We've got Trinity Trigger and Honkai Star Rail the week after that, later in April. So it starts to pick up again from here, as well as, of course, all of us finishing our various backlog efforts. If you've listened to this podcast to its conclusion, thank you so much for listening. If you've got any feedback for us, you can go ahead and leave us a comment at the bottom of the site post, on our YouTube post, or on the podcast service of your choice. You can find RPG's site on all the social media platforms. We're on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find the Tetracast either on our site, on YouTube, or on any of the podcast services, Spotify, iTunes, or Google Podcasts. And we will be back next week with another episode of the Tetracast. So thank you all so much for listening. Stay safe and take care. We will talk to you all next time.